Welcome to HP Fanfiction. Support me by subscribing the channel. Also, like and share the video to keep me motivated to make more videos like these. No one inside Hogwarts complained that the rest of their Hogsmeade weekend had been cancelled. After reading Sunday's edition of The Prophet, it's doubtful anyone would have left the safety of the castle anyway. With the Ministry having to deal with the aftermath of yesterday's attack on Diagon Alley, they simply couldn't spare the auras to effectively guard the village for the students' visit. The war had again hit the Hogwarts community, though. Katie Bell had lost her mother in the attack. The distraught witch had returned home and would stay there until after the funeral. Only the stoic efforts of Fred, George and Percy Weasley stopped their house, looking for retribution over the popular Quidditch players' loss. Neville and Parvati easily held the younger years in check. Most of them had friends in Slytherin anyway. Ron was the only dissenting voice they had to deal with. Since no one listened to him anyway, they simply did the same and ignored the prat. Cormac McLaggen would like to have started something inside Gryffindor, more so because he really fancied Katie and she wouldn't give him the time of day. Going against the Weasley twins, though, was never an option he would deliberately choose. They also had the head boy in their corner too. The reaction inside Slytherin House was along somewhat different lines. Even the staunchest supporters of the Dark Lord couldn't stand behind what had happened yesterday. They had of course heard about Katie's mother and understood it was pure chance that none of their own family had been caught up in the attack. The point the Prophet had clearly made, that if their families had been in the alley, then they were just as likely to be murdered as anyone else, was certainly not lost on any of its Slytherin readers. Draco and Pansy led the third years in opposition to any older Dark Lord supporters. The second years were all staunch Crow's Marauders members, while the first years loved their Marauders Club too. Instead of having a polarizing effect inside Hogwarts, yesterday's attack had actually introduced an element of solidarity against Voldemort and his followers. This effect, though, wasn't restricted to Hogwarts. It was being repeated the length and breadth of the British Isles. This was not so much a lurch toward the light, more a display of utter disgust at what Voldemort and his last remaining pair of disciples were capable of, supposedly in the name of pure blood supremacy. It would be a long time before any of them would raise their heads above the parapet again. There was also the not knowing just what this madman would do next. Distancing themselves from his actions now was not only the smart option, it was really the only option they had available. Harry knew what he had to do next. He hated using his fame like this, but still went ahead with it. This really was a good situation. Walking down Diagon Alley with Hermione on his arm would let the wizarding community see he thought it was safe to do so. Restoring public confidence was vital in getting Diagon Alley back on its feet. They also had a few shops to visit and a very important task to carry out in each. Arriving in Flourish and Blotts, the manager was with them in seconds. "Good afternoon, sir. I have something here that you might want to display at the front of your shop. It tells everyone who sees it that Flourish and Blotts have goblin wards protecting their premises and customers." Harry didn't mention that the Wizenga Mott would soon be voting to make the displaying of this plaque compulsory for any premises that had their wards. He couldn't understand why any business wouldn't want to shout that fact at the top of their voices. The bronze plaque Harry removed from his bag showed a nesting female dragon poised to defend her young. The workmanship alone would have owners wanting to display this work of art. The words Flourish and Blotts were clearly displayed in the nest area, making each of the plaques Harry had in his bag unique to a particular business. While having unlimited access to the Black Library had somewhat curtailed his mate's cravings for the printed word, she was still Hermione Granger. While Harry had been talking with the manager, Hermione had been browsing the shop's merchandise. She returned with 14 books that would be purchased before being sent to their fledgling library in Kinkersea. The manager at Quality Quidditch Supplies was a different kettle of fish. Knowing the boy who lived held no interest in the noble sport of Quidditch was not only heartbreaking, it was very bad for business. He tried his best to sell the young couple a wide range of Quidditch equipment and paraphernalia, finally getting the message they weren't interested when Hermione casually mentioned that a beater's bat could also be used for taking a swipe at over-persistent salespeople. Madame Malkin was grateful for the plaque, but had an even bigger bugbear than her Quidditch counterpart. Here were the two most influential Hogwarts students in the country, students who frequently featured on the front page of The Prophet and various magazines. Her problem was that apart from their Hogwarts robes, all their tailoring was done by the Goblins. Hearing that Gringotts had outfitted 2 entire year groups worth of students for the initial Merlin Ball had seen her in tears for hours with the mere thought of all that lost profit. It was something of a relief for the couple to finally reach Florian Fortescue's ice cream parlor. Now here was something and someone they both liked. While delighted with his plaque, Florian was canny enough to know that this couple sitting eating ice cream in his shop would do more than any plaque to let people know that life, like business, must go on. The cleanup was progressing all around them as Diagon Alley made a valiant attempt at business as usual. This couple, by their very actions, emphasized that point more than any speeches ever could. After spending a few hours in the alley, Harry and Hermione headed back to Gringotts. They would spend another night with Father before heading off to Hogwarts in the morning, Aura Tonks already confirming that she would pick them up in Gringotts. They arrived back in the Great Hall of Hogwarts to find a very subdued atmosphere, especially considering this was Valentine's Day. Hermione wore a red rose that Harry had given her on her robe. She noticed Padma wearing the same before her friend was hugging them in greeting. "Next time you do a runner, remember to take us with you." Hermione could only nod to Neville, knowing her friends were right. "I wasn't involved in any fighting, I just had to know that Harry was okay." A quick confirmation that Crow's Marauders was most definitely still on tonight helped lift the mood somewhat. They had also been accompanied to Hogwarts by Master Pitsley, so there really wasn't time to say much more. They needed to get to potions class. Emma almost needed a calming potion when she laid eyes on the copy of The Prophet featuring the attack. Barchoke's letter telling them all their children were fine was certainly appreciated. The 3 sets of parents had been having breakfast together when Dobby arrived with copies of the newspaper and Barchoke's letter. It would seem they were right. This Voldemort isn't just going to go away. He won't go away, Dan, because he's nowhere else to go. When Frank and I fought against him in the last war, things were so different. Then they held all the cards, and they weren't afraid to use them. We're still struggling to believe the differences this time around. I think I know how you feel, Alice. Those changes have all happened in the last 3 years. We moved to Britain just before our girls' 7th birthdays. For the first few years I was sure we had made a mistake. Ramrao persuaded me to let the girls try Hogwarts before we made any decisions, and I'm so glad we did. Her husband not only confirmed Smita's story, but added a bit more depth to the Patil's tale. Even then we weren't sure. Our girls being sorted into separate houses could have been the final straw. Instead it was the making of them. Parvati has Lavender as a best friend, while Padam, well, what can I say? Her choices of friends and the experiences they shared have changed our daughter beyond all recognition to the 11-year-old girl we put on the Hogwarts Express. That was something Dan could certainly relate to, and did. Putting Hermione on that train was the hardest decision we've ever had to make. Her bringing 2 friends home to spend Christmas in Crawley that year let us see it was the right decision. We obviously didn't know anything about the magical world beforehand, but our experiences since have made those roller coasters our kids are so fond of seem tame by comparison. We never expected Hermione to have already found her mate, nor did we even consider getting attacked in our own home as a possibility. Emma had gotten over the initial shock of seeing Harry charge out of Gringotts on the front page of the newspaper. She was once more able to participate in the conversation. Like Smita, we were of the opinion that Hogwarts was something we would let Hermione try. I don't think I would be being overly dramatic to say our daughter meeting Harry on that train radically changed all our lives. We've made some great race, gained a son with another on the way. Even then, we're not the most affected just of those of us sitting here today. Frank's hand slid into his wife's. His stutter meant that Frank really didn't say much. His wide smile, though, told everyone what he was thinking. Alice had grown into the habit of speaking for both of them. I would say you were right there, Emma. Just the 2 of us sitting here is a wondrous thing. Seeing our children all grown into the fine people that they are is simply the best feeling in the world. I know James and Lily would be just as proud. I only wish circumstances had been better. I feel I failed my godson, and then I see Harry standing beside his father. How could you ever even want to take that away from them? This had Emma smiling, knowing those two were as close as a father and son could be. It also gave her the opening she was looking for. Dan and I now understand how important godparents are in the magical world. Thankfully, Sirius just effortlessly extended his godfather duties to include Hermione, and Henrupke has been nothing short of brilliant with all the girls. For our son, though, we wanted to choose his godparents beforehand. We were thinking of asking Neville and Padma to fill those roles, but wanted to run it past you first. What do you think? Her suggestion was immediately met with 4 smiling yeses, making 3 happy couples sitting in the lovely sunshine while sharing breakfast. The bonds between the extended family were tightening, bringing them all closer and closer. The Patils and Longbottoms would be joined by the marriage of Padma and Neville. Having them as godparents to the Granger baby was considered a brilliant idea by all involved. Hermione was searching for a way to let her mate down gently, when Padma did the deed in her own inimitable style. Harry, that's a terrible idea. Valentine's Day is all about romance and love. We teach Crow's marauders how to fight. How could we possibly hold a Valentine's-themed meeting? Hand out kisses instead of chocolate. I don't want Colin getting any ideas. It's taken months for him to cope with my betrothal to Neville. I just wanted to see if we could cheer them up a bit. You're right, though. It was a stupid idea. Hermione, though, had a better one. How about inviting them to the summer fair being held in Kingassy? The director did say to invite anyone we wanted, and I don't see any of our crows having a problem attending a goblin event. This was news to Padma and Neville, so Hermione quickly brought them up to speed with what would be happening over the summer. It sounded wonderful when Harry described it. It's something I'm really looking forward to now. I was 6 the last time Gringotts held one. Sapphire and me had a great time. 2 weeks later she was gone. Seeing us having such a good time must have been too much for her father to bear. Harry suddenly had his arms full of witch, and it wasn't his betrothed. Padma now felt terrible for shooting his original idea down so harshly. Oh, Harry, I was 6 when the Pettiels came to Britain. I would have killed for a friend like you then. Sapphire will be back for this one, and we can use our experiences to make this the best Gringotts fair ever. Remember Sapphire's reaction to being on that flying carpet? We could have magical carpet rides around the glen. This was something Hermione hadn't thought of, but was giving it her full backing now. That's a brilliant idea, Padma. Having been on those carts inside Gringotts, I'll bet the goblins could build a wonderful roller coaster too. Mum certainly has enough pictures of them to give the goblin builders some idea of what's required. Food! All 3 now looked to Neville, trying to understand what he meant. The first time we went to Florida, what blew me away was the food and the sheer variety of it. If we could have that too, it would be a whole new experience for witches, wizards, and goblins. A now excited Harry bent down and kissed Padma on the cheek. That really is a wonderful idea. Oh dear, even with a ring on her finger, Longbottom can't keep his girl. Padma instantly switched to Goblin. Ignore him, Neville, love. We all know Flint is an asshole who's just looking for a fight. The large Slytherin just kept pushing, though. The 2 other 7th years who were currently with him at least had the sense to take a step back. Can't really say I blame Crow, though. Patil is at least a pure blood. Padma had to tighten her hold on Harry. Okay, forget the ignoring bit. Just challenge the stupid bastard, preferably before our goblin friend here kills him. Harry, he's obviously picked on Neville for a reason. Let Neville handle it. We all know he can. Padma felt some of the tension leave Harry at Hermione's words. Neville, though, was taking a page out of Harry's book. He walked up to a smirking Flint and punched him in the mouth. You have insulted not only my betrothed, but our 2 best friends. The House of Longbottom demands satisfaction. By making this a House Longbottom matter, Flint really couldn't refuse. Not that the Slytherin had any intention of doing that. This was exactly the outcome Marcus wanted, apart from the punch in the mouth. He figured Neville Longbottom to be the weakest of the 4, and Flint silently swore he would make this bastard pay for that blow later. I accept, Longbottom. Name your time and place. Can I assume Crow will be your second? My betrothed will be my second. Padma was now at Neville's side, standing ready. You insulted a goblin's mate too, never a good idea. If I hadn't stepped in with my challenge, Harry would probably have killed you. Right now on the Quidditch works for me. Unless you have to go change into your mask and Death Eater robes. Flint brushed off the goblin comment. He'd gotten what he'd planned for. Oh, I want you to see my face when I beat you. That makes you braver than your father, though still as stupid. The fight might have kicked off right there and then, but for the arrival of Professor Flitwick. What's going on here? Master Pitsley appeared to melt from the shadows before he answered the professor's question. Oh, this large Slytherin thought he would evoke a challenge from friend Longbottom. I might just stay to watch the outcome. Neville is friend to the nation and holds both ours and the Ministry's top award for bravery. They don't just give those awards away to anyone. That will be a hard lesson for this blowhard to learn. This is a House Longbottom matter, Professor, and we are both of age. Flint and I are on our way to the Quidditch pitch to sort out this disagreement now. Neville walked away with Padma on his arm, followed by Harry and Hermione, leaving Flint pleading with his two fellow seventh years for one of them to be his second. The news spread like wildfire and emptied the Great Hall. Even Ronald Weasley left his lunch to watch the fight. He did, though, grab all the food he could carry on the way out. Augusta suddenly found herself with a witch at either side of her. Both Henrika and Tonks were offering the same advice. Neville can handle this, Augusta. He wouldn't have called Flint out otherwise. We know that particular Slytherin has been looking for revenge ever since the new term started. He obviously thinks Neville is his best option. They are both of age, so you need to let this happen. I'm an Auror and I think I could take Neville. Notice I said, think. With their 4 sessions of defense a week, they are probably all beyond the practical side of NEOTs now. They're receiving Auror cadet training and Neville's power is only second to Harry's. He'll take Flint down. I'm certain of it. These were Augusta's own thoughts. She was delighted to hear them confirmed. Though, thank you, ladies. Can I suggest we get out there and watch? Harry and Hermione were setting up a warded area to protect the growing number of spectators. They then began coloring the grass inside the ward stones red so everyone knew where the boundaries were. Neville and Padma moved their swords onto their backs, making them accessible without restricting their movement, while slipping shields on their forearms. They were ready to fight. Flint's second was standing right in the corner of the designated fighting area, his body language clearly stating he wanted nothing to do with this. The Ravenclaw couple embraced their friends, before heading off to opposite ends of the fighting area as both would need to activate the wards. They had made the fighting area around 10 yards wide by about 30 long. They wanted Neville to have plenty of room to move. Padma would only become involved if the other Slytherin jumped in first, or if the far more likely scenario of Flint seriously breaking the rules occurred. When the wards were activated, Padma counted them in. 3, 2, 1, fight. Flint unleashed his most powerful curses against Longbottom, only to hit nothing. He never stood still long enough for Marcus to catch him. After missing Longbottom with about 8 curses, he then had to look to his own defense. Suddenly there were powerful and accurate curses coming his way. Flint was proud of his shielding ability, but they wouldn't stand up to much more of this. He needed to change tactics and knew just how to get the odds back in his favor. First chance he got, Flint put everything he had into a cutting curse aimed at Patil. That should put her out of this fight, while forcing his own second to join in, making it 2-1 against Longbottom. Padma, though, had been alert for something underhanded going on. She dodged most of the curse and deflected the remaining edge off her shield. This cowardly attack against his mate enraged Neville, though. He was now racing straight at Flint. The panicking Slytherin managed to get a couple of spells off. One missed before the other shattered Longbottom's metal shield. Marcus was confident of victory now until he realized why there was no return spellfire. Longbottom had forsaken his wand to draw that sword of his, a sword that was flashing through the air in his direction. Neville had intended to destroy the wand that would dare fire on his Padma. He certainly achieved that goal. He wasn't anywhere near Harry's standard with a blade though, and Flint's screams were because the blade engraved with the name Longbottom running its length had sliced clean through part of Flint's wand hand too. As Flint clutched his bleeding and ruined hand to his chest, his enraged rant at his opponent died before it reached his lips. The now bloody point of Longbottom's razor-sharp sword, poised at his throat, was responsible for this. Should that blade be pushed home, then he would never speak again. His opponent, though, had plenty to say. "You are a despicable coward and a stupid bastard, prime Death Eater material. You come anywhere near my family or friends again and I'll finish the job next time." Neville glanced over to see Padma covering Flint's trembling second. "Hey, I got no fight with you lot, I didn't even want to be here. Flint is our Quidditch captain and threatened my place on the team if I didn't do this. I'm not as stupid as he is, my wand was staying securely in my pocket." This got an acknowledging nod from Neville before he said the words that officially ended the fight. "My family honor has been satisfied." With that, Harry and Hermione collapsed the wards and the four combatants were hit by a wall of sound. All had been so concentrating on the fight that none of them noticed the absence of noise from outside their bubble. The wards, though, had allowed the spectators to hear every word spoken and spellcast. Everyone now heard Harry's voice as he took command of the initial situation. "Stay back, we have an injured man here who needs to get to the infirmary. Make a space so he can get through." The respect these four were held in was ably demonstrated as a path through the crowd opened like the Red Sea parting for Moses. Professor Slughorn stepped forward and, after carefully lifting the severed fingers from the grass, led his student off to the infirmary. Minerva was about to step forward to confront the group when Augusta's hand on her arm stayed her actions. This was a matter of House Longbottom honor. Minerva and all the people involved are considered of age. They took their business out of the castle and had protocols in place to protect the innocent spectators. On what grounds were you going to reprimand them? A Hogwarts student has been severely injured. Are we just supposed to ignore it because your grandson was involved? After that cowardly attack on his betrothed, my grandson could legally have done a lot more damage than that. I'm now asking, as the Hogwarts High Inquisitor, Professor McGonagall, just what Hogwarts rules did those students break? She hated giving her answer, but Minerva had no other option. Invoking House Longbottom honor had taken the matter out of school jurisdiction. "I can think of no school rules broken, Madam Longbottom, but you were going to publicly express your disappointment in my grandson for his actions today, not something I can allow. Those four know their actions after an event like this can be just as important as those during, so are ours. By all means, have a talk with Neville in private over this matter. He is a member of your house, and you are certainly entitled to give him your views on what just happened here. This was not a school matter, though, and that's as far as it will go. We all know Flint must have gone looking for trouble. Well, he found more than he could handle." Sirius was standing with his arm around his wife and added his 2 nuts worth to the discussion. "Just be thankful that wasn't Harry in there. If Flint had pulled that move on Hermione, I can practically guarantee you that Slytherin would not have been able to walk to the infirmary." Remembering what a first-year Harry had done to girls who had attacked Hermione, Minerva found herself reluctantly agreeing with Sirius. She would have a quiet word with Neville to discover exactly what brought about today's fight. Minerva was certain those around her would be doing exactly the same. Harry handed Neville a piece of cloth he'd just sliced off his robe before speaking quietly to his friend. "Clean your blade and then we need to go to lunch. Remember, your actions after a fight are just as important as those during it." Neville calmly cleaned his blade while well-wishers gathered to offer their congratulations. Padma was on his arm before he offered his other to a trembling Parvati. They led the way back to the Great Hall for lunch. Harry offered his other arm to Luna. This allowed them both to reassure her everything was okay. Harry thought inviting the Crows to Gringotts' summer fair was an even better idea now. He also intended to write to their father with some of their suggestions for making this the best fair ever. It was Harry's letter that saw his father standing in front of Ragnarok. The director was deep in thought. "Your family and their friends might have something here, something we hadn't even considered before. Thankfully, we haven't made any announcements yet, so this could work out even better. Your son has already expressed his eagerness for Gringotts to hold the event in Kingersea. What if we changed the event to the Baron's Fair? It would then be seen as your son and daughter hosting a traditional goblin fair at which everyone is welcome, rather than allowing the chance for there to be any grumblings about wizards and even muggles attending a Gringotts event. The ambassador caught on at once. Since my son and daughter actively try and embrace all three cultures that span their lives, any visitors would expect to see that. Exactly, rather than upsetting any of the more bigoted individuals on either side, we can defeat their arguments before they even get a chance to start. Here is an opportunity for the magicals and even muggles to see the best side of the nation. A couple of years ago we talked about your children's wedding having muggles, goblins and magicals in attendance and all being treated equally. That is still a worthy dream and one we certainly both share, but here is a chance to have that happen on a far grander scale and years earlier than we could possibly have hoped for. This has the potential to dwarf the amazing steps forward the nation has made since your son set off on that train for Hogwarts. This is colossal. As the sheer scale of what Ragnarok was proposing began to become apparent, a shiver ran down Barchok's back. This was not a shiver of dread, though. Quite the opposite. While they had been winning the battle against the Death Eaters and their Dark Lord, the battle of hearts and minds was always going to be their most difficult task. That they were the first in centuries to even take on the fight of ending the bigotry and hatred that existed on both sides of the divide gave some idea of the size of the task they faced. Here, though, was a golden opportunity to bring some of the barriers that existed between their peoples crashing to the ground. Barchok agreed totally with the director's summary. This had the potential to be colossal. The only reason I'm not sending for Grog right this minute is you and I will need clear heads to pull this off. We also have half a dozen allies for this cause currently sitting on a tropical island. I want you there for a couple of days and returning with firm dates and a plan of action. Young Weasley can handle the formation of the joint Aurora and Warrior response teams, something that will certainly come in handy to protect this fair too. They then sat for hours, throwing ideas back and forward while also trying to preempt any potential problems. Barchok eventually left with a long letter to write to his children before heading off to tropical climes and spending time with the Grangers Longbottoms and Patils. He was rather counting on Emma seeing this as a project that she could work on while out of the country and pregnant. The fact that she loved Kimsey as much as their children meant it was a certainty she would want to put on the best fare possible. Mother and daughter were very alike in that respect. That same daughter was rewarding Urgit for being such a clever owl when she felt her mate stiffen beside her. Hermione was instantly worried. The last time he'd reacted like this to a letter from father was when the director made him a centurion. Everything okay, Harry? Didn't they like our suggestions? They didn't like our suggestions, Hermione. They absolutely loved them. The entire nature of the fair has now changed. It's now become the Baron of Kingersea's Fair, a fair that's already destined to go down in history. Harry, you're scaring me here. Hermione, I'm scaring myself. It's a wonderful, fantastic, awesome kind of scary, though. Imagine those goblin children playing in the snow at Kingersea and then multiply that effect at least 1,000 times. That's how big this is. Roger, can you give Cedric a shout? Neville, can you do the same for our other set of twins? We're going to need a lot of help with this. Since Harry had mentioned this fair to Crow's Marauders on Monday night, the few known details of this upcoming event were now spread all over the school. Flint having to go home until his hand healed was already old news. The story of his clumsy challenge against Neville and then him firing a curse at Padma meant no one was in any hurry to see him return. Their four friends were soon at the Ravenclaw table, and Harry, being a goblin, got right to the point. Guys, Irgit and Moonlight know as much about Quidditch as I do. Here's the thing though, my father has suggested a couple of exhibition Quidditch matches at the fair, pointing out that goblins and muggles will never have seen the game played before. Are muggles even allowed to know about Quidditch, Harry? Far less watch a match? I thought the statute of secrecy covered that. I'm talking about people like the Grangers, McDonald's, Creevies and other muggle parents. Cedric. Parents who put their children on a train in London and have no idea what they do all year in Hogwarts. I think some marauder displays could be built into the weekend too. Can I rely on you four to come up with 2 Quidditch teams to play a couple of exhibition matches? We understand you don't know anything about Quidditch, but there are things that are necessary before you can put on a match. Little things like a pitch, supporters stands, equipment. Roger, we're having a roller coaster built in Kinnersey. A Quidditch pitch and some stands will be nothing compared to that. All equipment needed will also be provided, including a referee. Father has conservatively estimated there could be upwards of 5,000 visitors attending each day. Hermione was glad she was sitting down when she heard that. Harry, how are we going to cope with all of that? I don't even know where to start. Father does. He's heading for a certain island to get the help of some very clever people. We also need to give people jobs and leave them to get on with it, like the guys and the Quidditch problem. We can handle that, Harry. The entire Gryffindor team would happily turn out. Neville and Parvati immediately harpooned Fred's suggestion in perfect synchronization. Not McLaggen. He's not someone we want at Kinnersey, Harry. That boy could start an argument in an empty house. Harry nodded in thanks to Parvati. People like that were definitely not welcome to this event. George understood their objection. If Gryffindor had anyone else, the arse wouldn't be on their team either. Fair enough. We should be able to come up with another seeker. Everyone's attention was now on what was happening here, and Terry interrupted with a suggestion. George, Draco is a pretty good seeker. Flint wouldn't even let him try out. Terry had no intention of mentioning that Flint laughed Draco all the way out of the trials for turning up with a school broom. If Harry was providing all the equipment, then that wouldn't be a factor in this case. That Draco was his partner in their Marauders Club meant George didn't even hesitate over his next move. Hey Draco, you want to play Seeker on a team Fred and I are putting together to play at this fair during the summer? Sadly, Gryffindor's shouting across the Great Hall at Slytherin's was not such an unusual occurrence. That this shout was not only cordial but friendly stopped all remaining conversation in the Great Hall. Yeah, count me in. Pansy and I were planning on being there anyway. Good. Oh, did I forget to mention Harry's father thinks we'll be playing in front of thousands on the new Kinnersey pitch. This actually had Draco laughing. As long as we get a try on the new roller coaster, then you can certainly count me in. Realizing that everyone had been listening in to their conversations, Harry gave out some more information. The family get to try everything first on the Friday night before the fair officially opens on Saturday. Father's at the island to get the dates sorted, so we should know more details shortly. Roger and Cedric quickly had a mixed Ravenclaw and Hufflepuff team put together, with more than a few disappointed players putting their names down as reserves. Hermione's mind was still in a spin as they left for their extra defense lesson. Something was bothering her though, and her mate held the answers she needed. I get the switch to Baron's Fair, but not the sudden interest in Quidditch. Goblins never do anything without a good reason, though, so what's going on? We told Father about our encounter in the Quidditch store. He's trying to prevent a potential backlash before it gets any chance to develop. If we have magic carpet rides around our glen, something we all think is a great idea, we risk alienating the broom manufacturers and Quidditch organizations. Those are two powerful bodies, and this plan should get them on our side, exposing their wares and sport to a potential new market. Goblins and muggles may not be buying brooms, but as we saw in that shop, they make profit from selling everything from posters to Quidditch jerseys. And a bunch of Hogwarts students playing exhibition games against each other can do that? I don't see it, Harry. But Padma, you're missing a vital piece of information. Did you hear me say they would be playing against each other? Oh, you sneaky goblin, what have you got up your sleeve? Well, once we set the dates, invitations will be going out to a few professional Quidditch teams to see if they would be interested in playing an exhibition match at the Baron of Kinnersey's summer fair against Hogwarts opposition. They would then have the opportunity to make sure all these potential new supporters would be buying their team's jerseys and posters. Do you think they would say no if there was the slightest chance of getting the boy who lived photographed in one of their team jerseys? This had Padma laughing before she explained what was funny to her Quidditch. Ignorant friends. I was just imagining Harry in a Holyhead Harpies jersey. She had to get her giggling back under control before delivering the punchline. They're an all-female team, only witches can play for them. This set Hermione off too before Harry got in on the act. Neville, remind me to write to Father and make sure the Harpies are one of the teams he invites. An all-witch team might see me actually watching a match. This stopped the girls' giggles, causing Harry and Neville to start laughing. Both soon found themselves running to their lesson, being chased by their giggling again mates. The original idea for the fair might have been to lift spirits inside Gringotts, but it was now having the same effect in a castle over 500 miles away. It was looking as if they were going to have another busy summer. News of this fair spread like wildfire, so much so that awkward questions were soon being asked about the Kingersea event inside the Wizengamot chamber. Do we even know the date of this proposed fair? We have a prestigious event ourselves this summer that will see the eyes of the world looking towards Britain. This fair could be nothing more than an attempt to divert those eyes away from the Quidditch World Cup final, an event that more than one ministerial department is currently working very hard to ensure the success of. The minister knew he had to put an end to that idea at once, so stood to answer what was basically an accusation aimed at the fair. You will be pleased to know I can reveal there is absolutely no danger of the Quidditch World Cup final being overshadowed by this event. Through Arthur Weasley's department, the ministry is being kept informed of all the details of this event. It is being held in Kingersea on the first weekend in July, and I have already offered Baron Crow any assistance the ministry can supply. Again the grumblings came back at the minister. Why should the ministry help with what is basically a goblin event? Cornelius once more had to cut that idea off at the knees. I don't know where you got that information from, but I can assure everyone in this chamber that it's totally wrong. We all know Harry's background, being raised by his goblin father inside Gringotts. His mate was raised as a muggle, knowing nothing of our world until she reached her 11th birthday. While this young couple are rightfully proud of their different heritages, they are still more than willing to embrace ours too. The Baron's Fair will incorporate a blend of all three of those heritages, and I for one am really looking forward to it, having already been invited. The Dark Faction were again finding their every move countered. A final question was asked, more in hope than any conviction of scoring political points. What part of our heritage will be included? Something representative, I hope. Rather than worry about revealing details early, Cornelius thought it was far more important to get the chamber on side for this event. The entire reason behind this weekend is for those who attend to have fun. In that respect, I think we will be well represented. I don't want to give any secrets away, but I know two of our professional Quidditch teams have already agreed to play exhibition matches in Kingersea over this weekend. There will also be shops from Diagon Alley and Hogsmeade there too, plying their wares to new customers. The Weird Sisters are also keen to make an appearance, and there will certainly be a large Hogwarts student and staff presence in Kingersea over the entire weekend. You can perhaps see why I offered Baron Crow any assistance he required. Please remember, our goblin friends will also be warding the stadium being constructed for the Quidditch World Cup final. Satisfied that he had stopped any animosity toward this event in its tracks, the minister knew he would need to let Arthur know what he was somewhat forced to reveal. Cornelius just hoped it didn't cause too much trouble from Gringotts. Harry knew he was in trouble. Being surrounded by angry Quidditch players at breakfast was his first clue. Who's going to want to watch us playing when there are professional teams there? What's going on, Harry? He held his hands up, ready to offer an explanation. The story all over the front of the Prophet was not how you were supposed to find out about this. It was being kept as a surprise until things were confirmed. It was only confirmed 2 days ago. Here's the deal. On Saturday, the 3rd of July, Puddlemere United will be at the fair. They'll be signing autographs, posing for pictures before playing an exhibition match, playing against one of your teams. You could have heard a mouse fart in the silence that last comment caused. They had no idea it was about to get even better. On the Sunday, the visiting team will be the Holyhead Harpies. The silence this time was broken by Hermione and Padma. The sight of all those Quidditch players standing there with their jaws hitting the floor proved just too funny for them not to react with laughter. Their anger now gone, Harry found himself surrounded instead by extremely excited Quidditch players. Cedric, though, had a very important question. Which Hogwarts team plays who? Harry took a coin from his pocket and flicked it into the air. Call it. Cedric called heads, only for it to come up tails. Harry looked towards the twins. Your choice. It took them only seconds to choose playing against Puddlemere, leaving Cedric and Roger very happy too. Harry, though, had more to say. Guys, this might give you some idea of just how huge an event this fair is becoming. We were planning on revealing a lot of the details on Friday after classes, and also hoping we can count on your support. Cedric had his arm around Harry's shoulder, instantly publicly displaying that support for everyone to see. Harry, you're now giving me the opportunity to play against Gwenog Jones. Forget everything else you've done for me, for that alone anything you want is yours for the asking. Looking around, Harry was pleased to see a lot of smiling faces. Okay, Friday after dinner in the room. Centurion, why not hold the meeting in the Great Hall? It would save everyone traipsing up 7 floors. I can assure you we would all like to hear what will be happening at the fair, and how we can help. Harry bowed toward the staff table. Thank you, Madam Longbottom. That would be appreciated. Voldemort certainly didn't appreciate what he was hearing from his lieutenant. They were now reduced to hijacking the occasional prophet delivery owl for their news. Of course, this fair was heavily featured, and the opportunity to have another chance at Potter was something that needed careful investigation. Rookwood had been dispatched to Kincussie on an intelligence-gathering mission. He did not return with good news. The entire valley is powerfully warded at least as heavily as Hogwarts. We might be able to overpower them if we had about 100 Death Eaters at our disposal. With just the 3 of us, not a chance. There was even more bad news to come, though. It took me all day to find a hillside where I could finally get a look inside this valley. Even then, only the heavy charms on those stolen omnioculars allowed me to see anything at all. There was an army of goblins there, all working away and transforming the estate, with our society now applauding these beasts for hacking pure bloods to death with their blades. Attacking this target with just the 3 of us would be the equivalent of committing suicide. The Dark Lord had suspected as much. Having those suspicions confirmed, though, was still a blow. They would just have to make the best of it. Getting our allies to Kincussie was always going to prove challenging. We will just have to concentrate on our original target. This will also give Bella more time to recover from giving birth to your son. This may actually work in our favor. Our inactivity will see them relax their defenses, and then we will strike. Augustus was delighted to hear that news, worried he might have overstated his case against an attack on Kincussie. Giving your opinion to their master was always fraught with danger. What he didn't say was that, even at the height of his master's powers, and with all his Death Eaters present too, they would still have struggled to take on the Highland estate owned by Baron Crow. On the weekend of the fair, with the increased security Augustus expected to be put in place for that, it would have been mission impossible. Their lighthouse hideaway might be in the Outer Hebrides. But that was as close as Augustus wanted to get to Kincussie. Only death awaited him and his growing family there. He would gladly settle for reading about this fair in the Prophet. The very idea of this fair had Albus in a cold sweat. Would he even recognize the country he was planning on returning to? What had him really sweating, though, was the old wizard. Couldn't see any way this fair could fail, further marginalizing those pure bloods of a darker persuasion. As Britain's magical community moved further into the light, Albus Dumbledore could soon find himself as a rather desolate figure lurking in the shadows. Birch Oak and Bones appeared to be carving the country up between them, with Fudge holding onto their coattails and achieving undreamed-of public approval ratings for doing so. Even Voldemort's attack on Diagon Alley hadn't dented Cornelius's conviction. It had just pushed wizard and goblin relations even closer. Those joint Aurora warrior patrols in the alley may be offering reassurance to shoppers. It was safe to do so, but it was those plaques that really brought the customers back, or rather what they signified. In such a protected premises, Voldemort himself couldn't touch them. Sitting eating ice cream with the knowledge that you could safely thumb your nose at the Dark Lord would be an exhilarating experience for the witches and wizards of Britain, the vast majority of whom wouldn't have these wards on their own homes. Being safer in Diagon Alley than your own home might seem a weird concept, but it was also one that had been proven in the heat of battle. The three most dangerous people in the country had failed to harm a single person protected by those wards. That was a pretty compelling endorsement. It would also need to be an endorsement all the other shops quickly followed suit with. If not, they would be going out of business as their customers shopped in places they not only felt, but knew they were safe. Albus had expected the goblins to use Harry as a physical weapon to destroy Voldemort, a variation of the plan he himself had devised for the boy. Instead, they had used the boy as a political weapon, with absolutely spectacular results. Having Voldemort's mark was something the darker purebloods had once aspired to carry on their arm, not anymore. Those few not already dead were now excluded by wards from the Ministry of Magic, St. Mungo's Hogwarts, and, probably within 6 months, every business in the magical community that was open to the public. That Bones had been able to push these changes through the Wizengamot to the point where they were accepted by the magical community was simply unbelievable to the former chief wizard. As the die was set for his own return to Britain, he would now have to ramp up his plans for gaining a foothold once more in that changing society. It would be time to sow some discord before trying again to wrench Harry from the path he seemed to be heading down. If things were left to continue developing as they currently were, Albus could see the lad not having a choice to make by the time he came of age. He would be so entrenched in both societies that neither would really care what Harry called himself, just as long as he didn't leave them. The problem Albus had with that scenario playing out was it continually brought wizards and goblins closer, not something he considered healthy for the witches and wizards of Britain. He was still getting over the shock of a goblin female attending last year's Merlin ball. Simply by turning up along with Harry, the rest of the school just accepted her. That was a state of affairs that could no longer be allowed to continue. Only Albus Dumbledore was experienced enough and had the capabilities to wield power of that magnitude. It would simply corrupt lesser men. Britain unbelievably seemed well on the road to dealing with their current Dark Lord. The last thing his country needed, though, was to let another one grow right under their very noses, especially one with such major goblin backing. How long would it be before the witches and wizards of Britain were forced to live underground while the goblins used their wealth and power to reside in even more luxurious mansions than the purebloods had once built? He would have to start immediately with some gentle manipulations on his return. His visit to Britain might be limited, and Albus needed to make as big an impact as possible in the time he had available. They wouldn't know what hit them. Barchoke knew exactly what hit him. He now looked forward to his daughter's enthusiastic greetings. That her hug would soon be followed by a barrage of questions was also something else. The goblin was getting used to. "Father, it's so good to see you. What are you doing here? How are Mum and Dad? Did you honestly think we would leave this presentation to a couple of third-year students?" This shocked Hermione, until she heard Harry's loud laughter beside her. A groan was then called for, as she had once more been caught out by these goblins and their so-called sense of humor. The 5 Weasleys were boisterously greeting their own father. The noise that caused allowed Barchoke to have a quiet word with his children. "Dan and Emma are actually returning to Kinkussy tomorrow." He held his hand up to stop their objections before they could get started. "The entire glen is filled with our people working almost around the clock to get it ready for the fair. Anyone trying to attack Crow's Nest will find themselves getting quite the shock. I will also be moving there with Lucas and Moa coming over from Sweden to stay in Kinkussy too. They want to be closer to Hogwarts as Henrika gets nearer her time." As it was now confirmed that there were only Voldemort, Lestrange and Rookwood left to deal with, the couple couldn't see any way those 3 could get through the wards protecting the glen. Never mind the extra set on the house and the multitude of goblins who would be determined to stop them. Barchoke then took their minds off this for the moment by handing his daughter a scroll of parchment. "Arthur will handle the magical side of this presentation, with me representing the nation. I couldn't think of anyone else who could put the Muggle side of this across better than you." She was now beaming with pride before Hermione read the parchment. "Is this all confirmed?" "Yes, I will deal with the how and why. I need you, though, to explain just what I'm talking about. We now have goblins traveling from all over the globe to be at this fair. It's already the biggest event in Britain Gringotts have ever sponsored. The director keeps switching between being incredibly proud to extremely worried that we're being too ambitious. I am now in charge of the Gringotts side this project full-time, with the director looking right over my shoulder. Harry and Hermione returned to their seats. She needed to go over these notes. Barchoke had of course owled Augusta for permission to disclose their intentions for the fair tonight. He and Arthur left their children and moved to the front of the hall. While the wizard set up their presentation, the goblin addressed the students and staff of Hogwarts. Good evening, everyone, and thanks for allowing us to visit Hogwarts. We're here tonight to talk to you about an event that's happening this summer on my son's estate. The reasoning behind this weekend is really rather simple. It's all about having fun. Whether you're magical, muggle or goblin, irrespective of age or gender, you should find something at this fair that you will enjoy. There will be so much going on at so many different locations that we have copied an idea from Muggle entertainment parks that specialize in this kind of thing. Arthur is expanding a map of the Baron of Kingersea's estate, a map that has the information any visitor will need to plan their day. It was then Arthur's turn to talk to the hall. The centerpiece of this weekend is a cut-down version of the Trillium Stadium, the one that the Ministry will build for the Quidditch World Cup final. This version will only seat 5,000 spectators, not the 100,000 that the real stadium will hold. At specific times each day, events will take place in this stadium. The Quidditch matches and a performance from the Weird Sisters are only some of them. I understand your defense clubs are also considering putting on some displays. Arthur was looking to Harry as he asked the question. He soon got his answer. We're looking at running some speed and accuracy drills for the audiences, then run a team dueling competition like we did inside Hogwarts, just with a few more people watching. This got a few laughs before Barchoke took over from his son. There will also be displays of goblin fighting techniques and fights timetabled too. I know Master Sharpshed is hoping to entice the Centurion who has beaten him the last twice they fought into a rematch. Seats for that fight might be hard to come by. Dan Granger is also organizing a clay pigeon shooting competition. All entrants must have passed his handling guns safely instruction course though. The goblin paused for a moment. There were students at each of the 4 tables who knew exactly what clay pigeon shooting was. It would be far easier to let them do the explaining to their housemates before he continued. Barchoke was now standing beside the map and expanding on the illustrations shown. The Glen will have areas designated and dedicated to particular functions. For instance, in this part of the Glen we have the Winter Zone. This will have sledges for those who want to shoot down the hills, an ice rink for those who love to skate, as well as a snow-covered area for people who just want to play in the white stuff. Next to that is an area simply called Gringotts Zone. Here you will have a chance to see our smiths at work as they forge weapons and armor. Our jewelers will also be presenting their skills, with an exhibition of both types of wares available for all to see. Oh, and I mustn't forget our dragon handlers, who will also be parading their skills at working with these magnificent animals in a specially constructed chamber. The staff table was almost overturned at this point by Hagrid jumping to his feet. Dragons. Did ye say there would be dragons there? How do you get into this fair? Seeing Slughorn was very interested in that answer too, Harry quickly stepped in, by invitation only. Arthur was just as quick to continue the presentation and cover the awkward silence that Harry's answer just caused. This area here will be a play park for younger children with swings, slides and roundabouts. Surrounding this area will also be carousels and other such amusements for the younger generations. There will also be a massive food court where all different types of cuisine from every corner of the world will be available for people to try. Madame Pudderfoots, the 3 broomsticks and the leaky cauldron will also be represented here for those less adventurous visitors. To be honest, the only other thing on this map I actually recognize is the flying carpet rides. I'll hand you over to Hermione Granger to explain the rest. This admission was greeted by some gentle jibes from Arthur's twin sons as Hermione joined the pair beside the map. Alongside the flying carpets is the entrance to the roller coaster. If you've ever ridden in a Gringotts cart, then you'll have some idea of what this ride is like, though the information I have here states this one will travel at high speed all around the Glen. That would make it miles long and give you a great view of everything. The fact that there will be a go-kart track will certainly please Draco. We could hardly get him off them in Florida. The blonde Slytherin now had a wide smile on his face. All he would say to anyone that asked was wait and see, you'll love them. We then have what's labeled on the map as the water zone. Here there will be a log flume. Think Gringotts cart on water instead of wheels. There will also be rowboats next to our new small lock for anyone who wants a gentler time on the water, and various fountains for those who just want to cool off. The cinema tent will allow everyone to experience one of the best parts of Muggle culture, movies. I think they will only be showing short, classic cartoons, so people don't end up spending the whole day in there. Still well worth a visit. Hermione didn't want to go into too much detail. This wasn't the time or place for that. She was glad when Father once more took over. Gringotts have also been contacted by a circus troupe that perform all over Europe. Every member knows about magic, and while they mainly perform to Muggle audiences, they still do all their banking through Gringotts. They have asked for the opportunity to perform for us over this weekend. An opportunity we were more than happy to offer. The bank then started looking for customers who have chosen to work in the Muggle side. We will be contacting these people to see if this is something that may interest them too. While the map features the main confirmed zones and events, it doesn't highlight all the vendors, games of skill and chance, street performers and many other things that will be dotted around the entire glen. There will also be outlets from Gamble and Jeps, Florian Fortescue's ice cream parlor, Honeyduke's sweet shop and Zonko's joke shop, all selling their wares to a wider audience. Having set the scene so everyone really wanted to attend this fair, it was now Harry's turn to speak. He walked forward and stood beside his father, Hermione and Arthur. If this sounds too good to be true, I can assure you it's not, and I want to invite all the students of Hogwarts to attend. The cheering this announcement caused almost took the roof off. Harry had to wait a few moments before he could eventually make himself heard. You're forgetting I'm a goblin, and we never do anything for free. Wait until you hear the price before you cheer. To everyone in Hogwarts, that's just a map. To Hermione and I, that's our home. We will be inviting goblins, witches, wizards, and muggles into our home, and they will all be respectful to and of each other, or they will be quickly thrown out. The training they had received from Sirius was again paying dividends. By calling this their home, the purebloods' own codes of ethics would see them behave, lest they embarrass their family's good name. The goblins attending would know the mighty wrath of Ragnar awaited anyone who embarrassed the nation at this event. There could be queues forming to take all your gold, while your head looked on from the stick. The director stuck it on. There would be no goblins causing trouble in Kincassie that weekend. As you can imagine, something on this scale requires a massive amount of organizing, as well as an army of helpers to see it run smoothly. That's where you come in. We're looking for volunteers to work either the Saturday or Sunday. The reward for this will be an invitation for you and your family to attend on the day you're not working. The exceptions to this will be the Marauders clubs and the Quidditch teams. They will obviously want their families in Kincassie on the day they step into the stadium. That was an offer that held everyone's interest until Arthur made it even better. What Harry forgot to mention was that once you are in Kincassie, all these attractions are free. You obviously wouldn't expect to walk into Honeyduke's and help yourself for nothing. There will also be items for sale from various vendors throughout the glen, but you won't pay for any of the entertainment. On the day anyone is working in Kincassie, all their meals will be provided. Now, we're not looking for anyone to make any decisions tonight. Harry was halted as the entire Ravenclaw table stood and declared they were in. The other three houses soon followed, with only a few older Slytherins taking their time to make their minds up. Thanks for that. The plans at the moment see us all going to Kincassie on the Friday. This will give everyone a chance to find out what they will be doing and get a first shot at some of the attractions. We can arrange portkeys, or everyone could stay for the weekend. It was a massive roar of approval for the second option that halted Harry this time. It looked like they were having hundreds of guests staying for the weekend. Just one more thing they would need to add to their to-do list. Barchoke had this task on his to-do list for a while now. It was time he dealt with this unpleasantness. The man was led into his office, and Barchoke got right down to business. I take it you are aware of the changes happening outside Gringotts. Yes, I am given a copy of the Prophet every day. I have to confess, though, there have been days lately when the news being reported had me thinking I was being pranked. I still remember your son once telling me that goblins don't do pranks, so I have to assume it's all really happening. Your fellow Death Eaters who had the sense to fall on the Ministry's offer of clemency now find themselves marginalized to the point where they can hardly go out in public. Their dark marks now exclude them from playing any meaningful part in wizarding society. Do you like working in Gringotts? Severus Snape was no fool. He already knew there was no life waiting for him outside Gringotts. His dark mark would bar him from plying his trade anywhere in Britain. He wouldn't even be able to enter an apothecary to buy ingredients. I am very happy working in Gringotts, and thought we had a deal where I could remain here after my sentence was finished. That deal is still on the table. I might have another option for you, though. We might have a method of negating your mark. Severus was glad he was sitting down when he heard that. Here was something he had desired for many years. I didn't think it was possible to remove Voldemort's mark. We don't think it is either. What I'm offering is a chance to change your allegiance, and hopefully your dark mark. Swearing a blood oath of allegiance to the nation would see your status as a prisoner end, and we think overpower your oath to Voldemort. Should this be successful, you could still stay here if you wished, but would also have the option to leave and live normally too. Having learned much more about goblin culture since being able to speak the language, Severus knew this was an offer that wasn't made lightly. He only had one question he needed answered first before graciously accepting. Why are you making this offer? I can't believe your son or his friend have forgiven me. You are of course correct. I don't think Harry or Neville will ever forgive you. What they are trying to do is understand how a young man could make a mistake, and how much he now regrets that mistake. You were only 18 when you fell for Voldemort's lies, 20 when you trusted that other perpetual liar, Albus Dumbledore. While both my son and Neville have already chosen their life mates, they are an extremely tight group. Harry would do anything to protect Padma, and Neville is the exact same where Hermione is concerned. They are as close as siblings and are using that relationship to try to understand your desire to protect Lily Potter. But Choke was deliberately using Lily's married name, knowing the only man she loved was James. Snape needed to understand that this offer was being made because of the friendship he once shared with a red-headed Muggle-born witch. My son is advocating that only the guilty should be punished, a policy the Ministry's adoption of probably stopped a war. Only you know how guilty you are over this incident. We're not here to try and relieve or forgive that guilt. Severus had his head down, trying not to let image of a dead Lily Potter be his abiding memory of the best friend he ever had. He was concentrating on happier times as Barchoke continued. Your blood oath to the nation would see your own magic react if you ever betrayed that oath. The safety of a certain centurion and 3 friends of our nation would certainly be covered by that oath. As a father, I can honestly tell you I wouldn't be making this offer otherwise. Nothing in this world is more important to me than the safety of my children. I wouldn't hesitate to take my blade to anyone who threatened that safety. Now that you know the reason behind this offer, are you interested? That really didn't take any thought at all on Severus's part. My time spent inside Gringotts has been some of the most peaceful, happy and productive of my life. You got me out from under the yoke both Dumbledore and Voldemort had placed me under. After experiencing their manipulations for years, it is a delight to live in a society where people say what they mean and mean what they say. I would be honored to accept your very generous offer. It was time to explain what this offer entailed. You will swear a blood oath to the nation while your bleeding hand rests on the state stone. The stone itself will decide your measure and whether or not it finds your oath acceptable. Should it refuse, your situation will remain as it is. Should the state stone accept your oath, that dark mark on your arm will be anathema to it. Your loyalties cannot be divided in this matter. It will battle that mark for ownership of your loyalties. The nation against the single individual whose mark that is, will not be a contest. This will undoubtedly be painful to you. The decision, though, is still yours to make. Severus indicated his acceptance at once. Any amount of pain would be worth it to replace this mark on his very soul. If that replacement signified his allegiance to a society that gave Severus Snape a chance to atone for his mistakes, that would be a mark he would wear with pride. Barchoke would now have to make the arrangements and promised to give him at least a couple of days' notice. He would need that time to mentally prepare himself for this ordeal. Dolores once thought her demotion was an opportunity, now it was becoming an unbearable ordeal. Everything she worked and schemed so hard to achieve was crumbling to dust, right in front of her very eyes, and it all started with Crow. Okay, England getting knocked out of the Quidditch World Cup by Luxembourg wasn't his fault. Dolores would grant the Goblin brat that she was now left hoping Ireland made the final. The British Quidditch fans wouldn't queue to see two foreign teams contesting the World Cup. Seeing their magnificent stadium half empty was a recurring nightmare for the ambitious witch. It would be a very public sign of her failure that would be impossible to cover up. What the public certainly didn't need was the distraction, a copy of the aforementioned magnificent stadium being built by the Ministry on a Goblin's land provided, with the prophet going gaga in approval of the news. Instead of the county's excitement building toward the event she had brought to Britain, the entire country was going nuts over this fair. Why anyone would want to spend their weekend in the company of goblins and muggles was something that escaped her, not that she would be getting invited anyway. Since it was families of Hogwarts students, Wizengot members, and their families along with ministerial heads of departments and their families, Dolores didn't qualify on any counts. When she'd mentioned this was a further attack on the old pure-blood families to someone Dolores considered an ally, their response shocked her. There are no attacks on the old families, rather on those individuals who were stupid enough to call a half-blood madman their master. My family has been pure for generations and will be staying pure for the foreseeable future. There will never be legislation passed in Britain to force us to do otherwise. We are being allowed to live our lives the way we choose. What more can you ask for? If our beliefs are so brittle that someone even questioning them sees those beliefs shatter, then perhaps those beliefs weren't as right for us as we thought they were. While shocked at how accepting the old families were of the current situation, that wasn't what really irked Dolores. She was worried that the success of this fair would be the yardstick used to measure her own event, an event where she couldn't even control which teams would make the final. She now couldn't wait for the Triwizard tournament to hit Hogwarts. Dolores had been assured a pureblood would triumph, and she believed those assurances. It was all she had left to look forward to. Harry certainly wasn't looking forward to this. Like his father with Snape, though, it was something he needed removed from his to-do list. Hermione on his arm was what gave him the strength to knock on the door. The resulting loud barking saw Harry's hand slip toward the hilt of his sword. "Quiet, Fang, sit. Centurion, Miss Granger, what can I do for ye?" "Hello, Mr. Hagrid. I didn't want you to think I was being rude to you the other evening. You will be getting an invitation to the fair. As it will also be a portkey, we will be handing them out just before we finish up for the summer." "It's just Hagrid, Centurion. I can't thank ye enough for this. I've always dreamed of having a dragon. Merlin, where are my manners? Would you like to come in for a cup of tea?" "Sorry, Hagrid, we have defense shortly with Professor Lupin. We would have come down sooner, but this is the only free period we get in the week. I know you're all very busy, so thanks for taking the time to do this for me. It's very decent of you. I knew your mum and dad well. They would be very proud of their son." Thanks, Hagrid. See you around." As they walked back to the castle, Hermione could feel her mate was still tense. "That was a good thing you just did, Harry. I know it was hard for you. I can't ask others to hold out the hand of friendship then, not do the same myself." "You're right, Hermione. It was hard. If Hagrid hadn't blindly followed Dumbledore's orders that night, everything would have been so very different. That's it, though, I draw the line there. Hagrid is a simple soul who just did whatever the old manipulator told him. Horace Slughorn is a selfish, sleek-at, conniving, self-serving bastard who will never set foot in any home of ours." Hermione just rested her head on his broad shoulder. She was in total agreement with her mate on this one. There was no way Sluggy would be squirming his way into their lives. The man was so slimy he should leave a trail behind everywhere he goes. The self-styled quintessential Slytherin was nothing like any of their friends who had been sorted into the same house. The leech had at least taken the hint and now left them alone. He appeared to be going for a different approach to get his hooks into their family. Pansy was now the one being creeped out, as Sluggy appeared to have set his sights on indoctrinating Draco in the benefits of having an influential mentor. Draco took great delight in telling Sluggy he already had one, that Lord Black was regent over House Malfoy until he came of age. Slughorn wasn't stupid enough to mess with Sirius. Sirius was currently acting stupid. Well, his wife certainly thought so, as the marauder was in the process of chatting to her abdomen. You do know she can't hear you. She was cut short as their daughter suddenly kicked hard enough for her husband to see. Isn't Mummy silly? Of course you can hear me. Your mummy is such a beautiful person that I need this head start on her if you're ever going to be a daddy's girl. Your daddy has a way with charming girls, so you won't need to worry about that, my little one. You certainly made Pansy a very happy young girl with her birthday present. I spoke to Sissy and Elspeth first, and we all know it's just for a few years until those two come of age. I don't think it was making her a black that had Pansy so excited, though. No, it was the betrothal contract between Pansy Black and Draco Malfoy that made her birthday. Just so you know, there will never be a betrothal contract with our daughter's name on it. Have you met our daughter's godfather? Harry would skin me alive if I even tried something like that. Her father married the woman he loves. Her godfather will one day do the same. That's what I want for our girl. Draco and Pansy have always been betrothed. Pansy especially was missing the security that gave her. Henrika was resting on the sofa in their Hogwarts quarters, her feet up after a hard day. Sirius was sitting on the floor beside her, talking to the bump in her abdomen that was their growing daughter. She just couldn't resist running her fingers lovingly through his hair. Henrika was used to Sirius being charming. The old dog just couldn't help it sometimes. What she saw now was something even better. Sirius Black was sitting beside his pregnant wife and radiating contentment, and his pregnant wife found it so sexy. Sirius, I think you should take your wife to bed. He was trying his best to be a good husband, and sometimes Henrika made that task incredibly easy for him. The Blacks would be having an early night. Emma found herself having to concentrate on the task at hand. If she let her mind wander at all, there would be no work done today. Concentrating was a very difficult task, though. Her current situation was enough to make her normally cool, logical, and unflappable head spin. Emma Granger was pregnant, sitting on a magic carpet while flying over the estate that belonged to her daughter's mate, the Baron of Kingersea. But there was also a goblin and a Veela on the carpet too, barely rated a mention when compared to the rest. It was time to get down to business, though. There was a job to be done here. You goblins are all about function. When it comes to something like this, it has to be about entertainment value too. Entertainment is more than a few plants and trees. It needs to start at the design and construction phase. For instance, in the winter zone, make the refreshment area look like a Swiss chalet. Something that's different, looks great and enhances the environment you're creating. Recalling her experience of visiting Florida with the family last summer, Moa agreed totally with Emma. What most impressed me about these parks was how they kept providing surprises. Supposing you want to make your roller coaster a dragon theme, you could have the carriages designed to reflect that. Models of dragons holding the track up, and any tunnels appear as if you were entering a dragon's mouth. I see what you mean, perhaps a mermaid theme for the water zone. Moa was unsure about that. The fair is helping to promote better relations between British magicals and those they have looked down upon for generations. Perhaps mermaids would give the wrong impression. Dolphins might be a better theme there. This had Barchoke groaning. I see what you mean, but I'm so out of my depth here, it is scaring me. Sometimes I really long to be an account manager again. This started Emma laughing. I certainly know about feeling out of your depth. Dan and I have felt like that for the last few years. If you can give us your plans for each zone, Moed and I can work a little on some presentation ideas. What I would say is that the artwork in your grand hall is nothing short of magnificent. You certainly want to incorporate some samples of that type of work in your Grendit's zone. You want to show your nation at its best. That will certainly be as impressive to most visitors as your dragons. As they flew around the glen taking notes as they went, Barchoke suddenly realized how much he needed their help. Emma was right. A goblin-built park would work perfectly, but functionality alone simply wasn't going to be enough in this case. Dan and Lucas were currently in Crawley, fetching every photograph Emma had taken in Florida over the last 2 summers. They were then going to find some travel agents who would give them all these theme park color brochures for free. The 5 of them would sit down tonight and thrash all the ideas out for each zone, being able to give the builders color pictures showing approximately what they were looking for would be a great help. The goblin wasn't worried over Dan and Lucas's safety while they left Kinsley's wards. Both had emergency portkeys, and Dobby would be tailing them with Dan's loaded shotgun. 3 purebloods, attacking those 2 would be in for one hell of a shock. Sirius got one hell of a shock as Draco burst into his classroom. "Lord Black, you need to come at once. The Lady Black needs you." He raced into Henrika's classroom to find Hermione and Padma with their arms supportingly around his wife. Harry was pacing up and down as if waiting on someone telling him what to do. Sirius hardly got time to say a word when Neville rushed in with Poppy. She pushed the expectant father out of her way to examine Henrika. Not that Poppy needed to do much examining. Henrika's waters had broke. "We better get you to St. Mungo's. This baby wants to be born." The worry on Sirius's face was there for all to see. "How can that be? There's nearly 3 weeks still to go." His wife tried to reassure him. "Our baby heard her daddy talking to her and decided she wanted to meet him. It doesn't matter about estimates, love. Our baby is coming today. We'll need to get you outside the wards to Portkey." Here was something Harry could do. There was no trace of indecisiveness now. "Hermione, you take Sirius, I'll get Henrika." At that he easily scooped the pregnant Veela into his arms. "Tonks is in for a surprise. Emergency. Go, go." With a loud crack, all 4 of them disappeared from the history classroom. Poppy set off to alert Minerva and Augusta what was happening while the Lady Ravenclaw passed through the wall to supervise the rest of the history period. Their goblin portkeys passed through the Hogwarts wards and landed them in their training room in Kingassee, a surprised Tonks appearing beside them with her wand already drawn. "It's okay, Tonks. Henrika needs to get to St. Mungo's, and this was the quickest way." Hermione then opened the doors to the main house, and they swiftly moved out. "Wouldn't it been easier to just give us those portkeys?" "Sorry, Sirius. These portkeys are blood-bound to us. You can't have just anyone being able to portkey from the castle. Father had to get permission from the director to have these made. We were concerned Kinksy might be a target with Dan and Emma staying here. That is the only reason we were allowed to have them." Harry was carrying Henrika up the stairs as if she was a baby herself, with even the breath left to chat with his godfather as he did so. "Harry, I can still walk, you know. My job is to get my goddaughter and her mother to St. Mungo's as quickly as possible. This is the quickest way." She tried to say thanks, but a contraction hit. Sirius was at her side, holding her hand as they headed further into the house. Hermione was shouting to gain the attention of anyone who was currently home. Moa took one look at her daughter and didn't need to be told what was happening. She and Lucas were soon by her side too, as Barchoke provided a portkey to take them all to St. Mungo's. Since Harry wasn't for putting Henrika down, Tonks went along as his protection detail. Hermione decided to stay in Kikusi and catch up with her 3 parents. Tonks was soon wishing she'd done the same. Watching a trio of nervous males pace up and down the waiting room got old very fast. "Are you 3 going to sit? Walking up and down won't make this happen any sooner." She was interrupted by the nurse arriving and asking Sirius if he wanted to be at the delivery. The marauder took on a distinctly sickly pallor but still said yes. Sirius left the waiting room as if he was about to walk the Green Mile. Certainly there was a distinct lack of enthusiasm in his stride. This gave Tonks a case of the giggles, considering he was marching across the waiting room mere moments before. "Now will you 2 sit down? We could be here for many hours yet." The expectant grandfather knocked that idea on the head. "Henrika is a Veela. Giving birth for her will be much quicker. After Moa's waters broke, our daughter was born less than 2 hours later. You did exactly the right thing, Harry, getting Henrika here as quickly as possible. Okay, so not only is she incredibly beautiful, she has a much shorter labor too. Sometimes life just isn't fair. That's why she married Sirius, though, to balance everything out. Harry's jibe at his godfather had all of them laughing and was just what they needed for the nervous tension in the waiting room to relax. Lucas teased the aura some more. So you don't want to know that, in a couple of days, Henrika will look exactly like she did before their daughter was conceived. See, I was right. Life just isn't fair. This too was said jokingly, though. Tonks was every bit as excited as these two about her goddaughter's imminent arrival. It wasn't every day a light-sided member of the Black family was born. Augustus was working diligently on his project. He needed it to be completed before their son was born. As Bella waddled in to greet him, he knew that special event wouldn't be too far away. That also meant he was quickly running out of time to have this particular conversation with his mate. Bella's usual mercurial nature, though, now seemed like a stroll in the park compared to this hormonal version, which was why he'd put this talk off for so long. His mate, though, gave him an opening he just had to take. Why is my big strong wizard so busy? Is it because his little Bella isn't so little at the moment? Don't you love me now I'm fat and huge? Whatever his answer here, Augustus knew he was in trouble. As he helped his mate into a seat, he decided to tell her the truth. I'm working on a way to ensure our son will survive, no matter what happens to us. You will not send him away. Recognizing that wasn't a question but a direct order, Augustus put his mate's mind to rest. He will be staying with us. What I'm working on is a way to safeguard his future. Should his mother and father fall while in the service of their lord, he will not be in any battles with us until he's old enough to hold a wand and use it to fight back. He was well aware that would never happen, but Bella needed to be appeased in order to go along with this. Should both of us fall at our master's side, I will die happy with the knowledge our son will live. We both know neither the auras nor the goblins will show us any mercy. They will look after a child, though. If we don't do something, our son would be left here alone, crying for parents that will never return. He'll cry until his strength goes and he dies of dehydration or starvation. That dreadful image reached the mother in Bella. Big fat tears ran down her cheeks, while her hands were protectively placed over her abdomen. What can we do? There must be something we can do without betraying our master. Neither of us could ever do that. I think we both know we will die serving our Lord. We both accepted this long ago and would never try to shirk our duties. Our son, though, deserves a chance to live his life, to make his own choices. If he has his mother's power and his father's intelligence, our son could one day end up lording it over the entire country. I will face death with a smile on my face in the knowledge that possibility could become a reality. Who would look after him? There are still families out there with the right breeding, the right values. Any son of ours would be made most welcome. As Bella concentrated on the large bump that was their growing son, she only had one question left. What do we have to do? Augustus tried not to let the relief show on his face. He too was in tears at the thought of their future, or lack of one. I'm working on a blood ritual that, should the both of us die, will see a tattoo appearing on our bodies, giving the location of our son, and this only activates after we're dead. Yes, my love. We both swore to give our lives defending our master. We will honor that vow and go down fighting to our very last breath. I hope with all my heart that our master is successful and our son can grow to stand by his side. With the odds so stacked against us, though, I feel it is only prudent to take some steps to protect our baby. Here was something she could accept, knowing that any battle that saw her and her mate fall would probably see an end to their master too. Your little witch needs to feel her big, strong mate's arms around her. As Augustus comforted Bella, Voldemort silently withdrew from the open doorway where he'd listened to the entire conversation. Part of him wanted to gut Rookwood and watch him die slowly for daring to doubt his lord. Another part, though, couldn't fault the loyalty of these two followers who were ready to fight and prepared to die at his side. Their concern for their unborn son touched something deep inside the Dark Lord. He was left wishing his parents had been as loving and capable in their attempts to see he was properly looked after. He would have to make some arrangements so his beloved Nagini survived. There was enough wildlife on the island to sustain her. All she would need was a dry, sheltered place to escape the worst of the weather. Of course, a human child would make a nice meal that would keep his familiar alive for months. The Dark Lord hadn't changed that much. Sirius couldn't believe the changes in him since the last time he held a baby in his arms. Then it was Harry, but today it was his own daughter, and Sirius Black finally felt as if his life was complete. His deep thoughts were interrupted by his wife. "Sirius, say something. She is the most beautiful girl I have ever seen. Considering I'm currently in a room with her mother and grandmother, that's really saying something. I present to the world our daughter Astrid Aurora Black." Moa left to tell the rest of their company the news and give the couple a few minutes alone. Sirius handed Astrid back to her mother and sat on the bed beside his two girls, an arm around Henrika as their daughter got her first feed. "How are you feeling, love?" "I'm fine, Sirius. Providing Astrid is the same, we should be allowed home tomorrow. I think we should stay at Kinkissi, at least until the holidays. Mum and Dad are both enjoying working on this fair, and it will be busier than Grimmauld. And it provides company for Dan and Emma. I have no problem with that. I'm sure Barchoke will provide me with a port key from Hogwarts to Kingassy, just not one that goes through the castle wards." It was about 15 minutes later that their guests came to visit. Astrid looked even smaller when resting in the crook of her grandfather's arms. Harry was clearly desperate to hold his goddaughter, but terrified in case he didn't do it properly. "Harry, you carried me and Astrid safely into St. Mungo's. I'm sure you won't drop her now." All were left wishing they had time to grab a camera before they'd rush to St. Mungo's. The look of utter bliss on Harry's face was priceless. That look was still there when he and Tonks returned to Kinkossi with the news. "I held my goddaughter in my arms, and it was just amazing. She's barely hours old and already got my mate wrapped around her little finger. Should I be worried, Harry?" This seemed to set Harry's thoughts off in another direction. "She'll grow up with our brother. They'll be best friends, just like us. Oh great, another one of my children bonded to their mate before they hit their teens. At least I'll get to watch Sirius crumble as he loses his daughter so young." "Dad, you never lost me. I'm still here. We're just living in our house now." It was a puzzled Emma, though, who had picked up on something else. "I get the Astrid, with Henrika being Swedish, but why Aurora? Sirius's middle name is Orion. He wanted something along the same lines for his children. He also said Astrid Aurora Black is already the light of his life. Sometimes that man could charm the birds off the trees." While he was listening to Tonks explaining the name choice, Harry's thoughts had wandered in another direction. "You'll all get to meet her tomorrow. They'll be staying here until the summer holidays." His attention moved to his mate. "We've already missed today's defense lesson. We could skip tomorrow too and see Astrid before we head back for Mooney's class." The look of longing in his eyes meant Hermione was always going to say yes. Harry, even considering missing his defense lesson, told her exactly how much this meant to him. "I don't think you would be able to concentrate on lessons anyway. Of course we'll stay. You better let Padma and Neville know, though. They'll be anxious for news too." Moa spoke to Augusta on the flu. She was desperate to tell everyone about her new granddaughter. "I'll let them know we'll be in late tomorrow." Emma was still fixated on the baby's name. Baby names were something she and Dan had been giving a lot of thought to recently. It was time to see if those thoughts were correct. "Harry, Dan and I have been thinking long and hard about what to call our son. We wanted his name to reflect on the person who made all of this possible. We were hoping to call him James, after your middle name and I suppose your dad." A flabbergasted Harry glanced toward his father for any ideas on how he should reply. "I think it's a wonderful idea. We couldn't really saddle the poor baby with a name like Barchoke Granger." Watching the close relationship between this father and son never failed to draw a smile from Emma. They had of course run this idea past Barchoke first. "Without you, Harry, none of this would have happened. I already know you're going to be the best big brother you can be to him. This is just a way for us to say how much Dan and I love both our sons." At that, Harry was in Emma's arms, being very careful with her condition. "James Granger, I really like that. Have you picked his godparents yet? Hermione asked her dad. Her mum didn't look like letting Harry go anytime soon. We were going to ask Padma and Neville. What do you think? I think they will love the idea. Hermione now had an arm around each of her fathers. I didn't think Harry could get any more excited about this. Just proves I was wrong. Our family keeps on growing, and the bigger it gets, the happier he is. Are you trying to warn me that there will be lots of grandchildren? Her dad's comment had Hermione blushing. I don't know about lots, but there will be at least a couple someday. Harry and I have a lot we want to do before that, though. Certainly not until after university. That news pleased both fathers immensely. They wanted their children to have lives of their own before having children themselves. All this talk of babies had Tonks feeling rather broody. The rate her relationship with Remus was progressing, though, these two would probably end up having children before her. She was going to have to talk with him, hoping she didn't have to explain the birds and bees to a professor. The two birds were flying over the glen. Both were having fun while looking down as their home was being transformed all around them. They also noticed some other residents who were keeping a keen eye on what was happening to their glen. Hermione flew down to greet them. The children were watching the construction of a stone dragon as the kestrel swooped down in front of them. When the bird changed to Hermione, there were as many shrieks as there were cheers from the youngsters. She stood and held her arms out, though Harry had perfected his own landing method. The swift flew into Hermione's chest and transformed while Harry's arms snaked around her. This time the children had some idea of what to expect, so it was purely cheering that greeted Harry's arrival. The couple then found themselves being dragged around by the excited children as they were shown the best bits of construction from a much younger perspective. Harry was delighted with their reception from their young friends. If the children who already lived in Kinnickosy were this excited about what was happening in the glen, he couldn't wait to see the reactions of those from Gringotts, or for that matter Hogwarts. While their close friends would have their time spent in Florida to compare their Kinnickosy efforts too. For the vast majority of visitors this would be a totally new experience. Noticing the track for the roller coaster passed straight through the hill that the Gringotts zone was being constructed inside, Harry pitched the idea he just had to Hermione. What if we put a station in here? It's about halfway around the attractions from where visitors originally get on. It could then be used to travel from one end of the glen to the other, or passengers could just sit on and enjoy the entire ride. It would then be like two coasters for the price of one. His mate was still troubled by the goblin workers in their glen bowing to her. What Hermione didn't know was that by walking around the glen with a goblin child taking each hand, she was just enhancing her already considerable reputation inside the nation. I think that's a great idea, Harry. Wizards and witches are used to getting on and off carts inside Gringotts. While that part might still be the same, what they would be getting off to would be something completely different. I can't believe the size of this place, or the amount of work that's being done in the Gringotts zone for just a weekend. Well, this saw Hermione pinning her mate with a look, telling Harry it was time to fess up. They're putting so much work into this zone because the director is hoping that some businesses might want to transfer here after the fair. If we want to build a community here, then we need more than just the dwellings that are in Kinnickosy at the moment. It's not as if we don't have the room. Hermione's brilliant smile told him he wasn't in any trouble. Our brother is going to grow up with lots of friends, and no prejudices. I love it. Spending a few hours in the company of the children was exactly what the couple needed. The last few months in Hogwarts had been very busy and pretty intense. Their monthly sessions with Mad-Eye were both eagerly anticipated and dreaded. Some of the things he was showing them they might need to know. They still felt dirty afterwards, though. Knowing exactly what they might be facing allowed for Mad-Eye to concentrate on their three possible adversaries. He had dossiers on Voldemort, Lestrange, and Rookwood, as well as some memories to show their attacking techniques. Both Harry and Neville almost attacked the old aura themselves when they saw some of the memories were from Frank and Alice. Neither wanted these two to have to think about that part of their lives again. It took Tonks and both their mates to stop a war kicking off, allowing Mad-Eye time to explain that the former auras had volunteered to help. They knew donating these memories would help their family, Frank and Alice also knew that people who had encountered Voldemort in the last war and lived to tell the tale could be counted on the fingers of one hand. Moody had to show those memories repeatedly. Both boys were in tears the first time they watched a much younger Frank and Alice. Neville was beyond delighted with the condition his parents were in at the present, but here was proof of just how much they had lost. Those tears soon gave way to awe as they watched two of the best Aurors the Ministry had fighting for their very lives. It was only after overcoming all these emotions that they could then focus on the job in hand, watching Voldemort. He was fast, deadly, and certainly very, very powerful. All watching, though, had the excellent example of Frank and Alice fighting back to give them hope, that and the knowledge that Harry had already hurt him with a spell. Deborah Dugan had known exactly what Mad Eye intended to do with the memory he asked for. She gladly provided her account of the attack on Diagon Alley. Seeing a pregnant Lestrange fire the killing curse at little Danielle hardened all their hearts against this witch. Watching as all three attackers then slaughtered innocent shoppers let them see exactly what they were dealing with. The goblin charge from Gringotts allowed the last few people still exposed in the alley to reach safety as all three attackers switched their attention to the warriors. The memory also showed that Deborah was the first person in the alley to open fire on the attackers, clearly saving goblin lives by her actions. That was news that quickly made its way to Gringotts. The Duggan home might already be protected, but bravery like that in defense of warriors couldn't go unrewarded. After saying goodbye to their young goblin friends and the couple of adults who had been along with them, Harry ran a few steps before launching himself into the air. He transformed into Swift as he jumped and was soon flying around the laughing children's heads. Hermione completed her transformation before taking off and living up to her nickname of Hover by hanging about 15 feet up. Swift then circled her a few times before the couple continued their tour of the Glen. It was a couple of excited and happy teens who arrived back at Crow's Nest, only for those emotions to be kicked to a new level. Sirius, Henrika, and Astrid Aurora Black had arrived. Harry thought holding his new goddaughter was the best feeling ever, only to have that feeling intensified. Sitting with his arm around Hermione as she held Astrid was simply the best feeling in the world. Emma had her Polaroid land camera out. Dan had bought it as a present for his wife, so they didn't have to worry about just what was on the 35mm film they sent off to be developed. Children with wands, swords, and then Barchoke or Dobby would all raise eyebrows at their local branch of Boots. Their children would now have a few pictures of Astrid to take back to Hogwarts with them and show their friends. After what she'd seen today, the scholarly Miss Granger was already counting every one of those 16 days until they boarded the express to bring them back home. By Augustus's calculations, Bella was 16 days late. It was no surprise then when she went into labor. That didn't mean, though, that a part of him wasn't totally panicking. His mate and unborn son were now counting on him, yet all he had was a couple old books. Books he'd now read from cover to cover, and a few Beck potions he was able to pick the ingredients for. Bella deserved and probably required the best care Mungos had to offer. Instead, he was all she had. Their master had made his position on this matter crystal clear. Bella's health was his only consideration in this entire process. He needed her fighting fit, and no baby would be allowed to endanger his plans. His only offer of aid was made to Augustus when they were alone. Should the birth of this baby at any time threaten Bella's life, their master himself would cast the curse to kill the baby and get it safely out of its mother. That this was their master's form of macabre compassion, saving Augustus from having to cast the spell on his own son, sickened the hardened Death Eater. Bella, though, seemed to be relishing labor. Not only would she soon be able to serve her lord again, she appeared to derive a thrill from the fact their son could cause her pain before he was even born. It had certainly crossed Augustus' mind to grab his son and run at the first opportunity, but he also knew he just couldn't do that. He may carry his master's mark on his arm, but it was something else that stopped him running. That night in her cell, his beautiful Bella had captured his heart and soul. One day with Bella in his life was worth more than a year of life without her. Augustus simply couldn't go back to that life. It just wasn't a life worth living anymore. While Bella drank her potions and pushed when Augustus instructed, their master hovered menacingly in the background. His mate was basking in the perceived concern the Dark Lord was showing for her health. Augustus, though, knew his real motives. It was therefore a great relief when their son's head started crowning ahead of schedule, a sure sign it wouldn't be long before their baby was born. The relief when he was able to place their son onto his mother's chest was unbelievable. Augustus actually felt weak at the knees. Their boy's cries had certainly proven that his lungs were in good working order. Having him wrapped in a blanket and feeding at his mother's breast soon quietened their baby down. It was to this scene that their master made his presence known. "Congratulations on the birth of a fine son, Augustus. You keep surprising me. I didn't think you would have pulled that off today. I suppose being motivated helped." Bella beamed with pride at her master's comments. Only Augusta knew what he really meant by that. It was not something he ever intended to share with his mate. As the Dark Lord was leaving, Bella's misreading of the situation could have seen their entire family wiped out here and now. "Master, I was wondering if you would allow us to name our son after your grandfather. Marvolo Gaunt was a proper pureblood and blood heir to Salazar Slytherin. He would surely be as proud of his grandson as we are. Being named Marvolo Rookwood would give this little one a strong start in life." Tom stopped as if he'd just been stabbed in the back. He was of course aware that his origins were now well documented, but that his followers would mention it to him was a shock. It was almost as big a shock as meeting his uncle for the first time. Tracking down Morphine Gaunt had been difficult, and still ranked as one of the biggest disappointments of his entire life. Like every child raised in an orphanage, there is always the dream that one day a relative will turn up to take you away with them. "You being here is all a mistake, and we've spent years tracking you down," were phrases every child in the orphanage longed to hear. Morphine was dressed in filthy rags while living in conditions you wouldn't have kept pigs in. He had mad, staring eyes that stared in different directions at the same time. Those eyes were hard to see through his filthy long hair that seemed to grow into an even filthier beard. Those squinty eyes were sharp enough to recognize kin though, and Morphine wasn't exactly laying out a family welcome mat. "Get out, I me who's yours half-blood bastard. How dare you show your mining mug, a mining mug that looks just like that muggle who fathered you." Discovering he was related to the Gaunts, a pure-blood family descended from Salazar Slytherin, had seen Tom make his way to Little Hangleton the first chance he got. One look at this shack, combined with his uncle's guttural tirade, destroyed any trace of Tom Riddle once and for all. Discovering he had a muggle for a father also made his blood boil. This imbecile had actually noticed his sister, Merope, mooning over the muggle. He then managed to get himself and their father flung into Azkaban after he used magic to attack Tom Riddle. This of course left Merope free to pursue her dream, resulting in Tom Marvolo Riddle being born. That Morphine appeared more upset because he had plans of his own for Merope saw the witless moron on the receiving end of a stunning curse. It was Lord Voldemort who left that shack and made his way up to the Riddle family manor, with Morphine's wand in his hand, using it to kill his father and grandparents. It was certainly Lord Voldemort who returned to the shack and altered Morphine's memory to show he had committed the murders. With Morphine having already spent 3 years in Azkaban for attacking the same family, Lord Voldemort was sure the case wouldn't be examined too closely. He left that shack with the gaunt ring on his finger. His uncle wouldn't be needing it where he was going. He also needed to make a decision here, seeing Bella cradling the baby to her breast while looking to him in avid anticipation of a positive answer made his mind up. Bella was correct in saying Marvolo Gaunt was a proper pureblood and blood heir to Salazar Slytherin. Marvolo would also undoubtedly have killed any muggle who dared to touch his daughter. The Dark Lord had intended to wait until Bella's labor was threatening her health and then dispose of the as-yet unborn baby, testing her mate's loyalties to their limit. Rookwood obviously realized his master's intentions and had somehow managed to speed up the process. In doing so, though, he still answered his master's question. Rookwood was loyal to his family first. Having his son named Marvolo would be a constant reminder of where his mate's loyalties lay. Lord Voldemort consented to the child bearing his middle name. Bella was ecstatic at that news, already calling their son by his new name. Augustus, meanwhile, was almost dropping from relief. He knew their son was in danger until he was born, to then face even more danger immediately after delivery was totally unexpected. He didn't have time to lie down and congratulate himself though. He had a potion to make and then runes needed inscribing. The placenta that had supported Marvolo Rookwood for the last 9 months would now be the main ingredient in a ritual that should hopefully see it continue to provide life-saving support. Lord Voldemort was almost chuckling to himself as he left the new family. The boy would soon learn everyone who didn't live on this island would hate his name. That life isn't fair would be a good lesson for any child to learn, one that he himself had to face in that orphanage. He certainly intended to add more layers to the terror his name induced. His campaign would begin soon. The Ministry were going out of their way to rebrand him as a terrorist and a monster. His next act would be truly monstrous. He would wait and see what they made of it. As if the task they'd set themselves wasn't monstrous enough, there was now a whole new layer of complexity about to be added to it. Namely, this year's Potter scholarships, the Muggle-Born Protection Act, and sponsoring students from families who now couldn't afford to send their children to Hogwarts because of Death Eater involvement. Bochoke sat beside his 2 children in Augusta's office. Minerva and Amelia were also present for this meeting. They were looking to Harry, though, for some decisions. After all, it was his gold being spent here. If Colin was a good case for a Potter scholarship, then his younger brother must be too. I don't want to set a precedent here, though. Pauline has a younger sister and there's another Creevy after Dennis, who'll soon be Hogwarts-bound too. We could easily reach the stage where the Potter scholarships would effectively already be decided before the committee sat down to discuss the matter. His mate then made a suggestion. What if, instead of scholarships, they were sponsored? You're spending a fortune funding the children of Death Eaters to attend Hogwarts. I think Dennis Creevy deserves at least that. We're spending a fortune, dear, and that's a great idea. Not only does it allow 2 more students to become Potter scholarship holders, it adds credibility to the sponsorship program if the siblings of the scholarships receive them too. Hermione let out a theatrical groan. Padma was right. We need to build an extension onto Crow's Nest. Okay, that's solved. So how many Muggle-born families will be new this year? Minerva didn't even need to look. 4 families will be sending their first witch or wizard to Hogwarts come September. There are of course more Muggle-borns than that in the year group. The rest will have siblings already at Hogwarts. The 4 families could stay with us for the weekend of the fair, along with all the students from Hogwarts, the Creevys, the McDonalds, Uncle Tom Cobley and all. See, Hermione, I knew you wouldn't mind a few more. I don't remember inviting this uncle, though. Muggle humor, Harry. Right time, certainly wrong place, and definitely the wrong company. This cracked their father and Harry up, earning more groans from Hermione. Crow's Nest will need to become Crow's Castle for this to have any chance of working. Never fear, my daughter, it is all in hand. Seeing Hermione looking at him as if he was nuts, almost had Barchoke laughing again. That would have been cruel, though. His daughter was clearly worried about this problem, and it was time to put her mind at rest. The area behind Crow's Nest will become a campsite filled with magical tents that will host all the Hogwarts students. Your dad said Professor McGonagall should take one of these with her when telling Muggle families about the existence of magic. He says it's the most impressive piece of magic he's seen. There will be tents set up in your training area for the Creevys, McDonalds, and any other families you want to invite. Minerva thought that wasn't a bad suggestion, explaining to the teens that magical tents had expansion charms, so the inside space was far greater than the outside suggested, often containing 3 or 4 furnished rooms. With auras and warriors patrolling the campsite, there would be no need to worry about any inappropriate behavior from the Hogwarts students. Such behavior would also see them kicked out the Glen, so no one would want to chance that. The Hogwarts elves had also asked their champion if they could assist their Potter counterparts at the fair, an offer Harry immediately accepted. Harry also had to accept that Centurion Crow couldn't be on duty that weekend. It was the Baron's fair after all, and the Baron of Kingersea had to be present and available to meet his guests. Tonks was in charge of security for the event, since she knew the Glen and everyone who would be there, as well as speaking Goblin and having worked in the joint operations to protect Hogsmeade. She was the obvious choice. It was another aura Harry had on his mind, though, as he spoke with Amelia. "I would like to ask a favor. Would it be possible for Aura Dogan to have that weekend off? We want to invite the Dogan family to spend the weekend with us. Deborah saved goblin lives with her actions on the day of the attack. We would like to say thank you." She couldn't remember Harry asking for anything before, and since this was something well within her powers to grant, Amelia agreed. A now smiling Harry let her in on the rest of his plans. "We would also like to invite the families of your auras to attend the fair. Can I ask you to organize who would be coming when? I didn't want to say anything before asking you about Aura Dugan in case you thought I was trying to buy you off. Your department gives up their time to protect us at Hogwarts, and then again during our Hogsmeade visits. This is just as a thank you from us." Again, this was something Amelia rapidly agreed to. Invitations to the Baron's Fair were harder to come by than tickets for the Quidditch World Cup final, and this gesture would really be appreciated by her department. Minerva and Amelia would meet with Sirius as quickly as they could to decide next year's Potter scholarships, with Augusta helping Minerva inform the new families they had a magical child eligible for Hogwarts and inviting them to King Usse for that weekend. The only holidays the extended family had planned for this summer was sometime on the island after the fair. With the amount of work still needing done for the fair, it would be a holiday the family would certainly be looking forward to. Excitement was rife on the express as it steamed its way toward London. While students returning home for their summer holidays meant this annual journey was always a pleasurable trip, this year had an added incentive. In 2 weeks it was the Baron's Fair, the most talked about event in years, and the entire train was invited. There were 3 couples sitting in the compartment as Luna popped in to talk with them. Her opening the door, though, allowed the current occupants to hear the girly laughter coming from the passageway. The laughter was easily recognizable and drew a frustrated groan from Padma. "Luna, do I even want to know?" It was Pansy who answered. "Let me try to guess first. Pavati and Lavender have got some older boys cornered and are flirting mercilessly with them. The boys are also looking around for an escape route to get away as quickly as possible." Luna's nod saw a puzzled Hermione focusing her attention on her Slytherin friend. "How could you possibly know all that? Granted, I guessed the first bit myself. Those two are playing a dangerous game. They act all flirtatious, knowing none of the boys they flirt with will ever take things further." "Hey, that's my sister you're talking about." "Exactly, which is why they can get away with it. After Harry and then Neville took down that stupid arse, Marcus Flint, last year, only a fool would want to mess with you four. Anyone hurting or taking advantage of Pavati, though, knows that's exactly what they'd be facing, and she knows this too. That's why all the boys in the years above us avoid her." Cedric practically runs away when he sees her heading in his direction. "By the same token, no one wants to upset you four by telling her to piss off." All recognized the truth in what Pansy was saying, though none were happy about the situation. "When I speak to her about it, she says it's all just a bit of fun. If our father sees her idea of fun, she'll be packed off to India with a betrothal contract in her hand." She felt a supporting hand on her shoulder and saw that a concerned Harry was at the other end of it. "I'm sorry, Padma. I know you only got into this situation because of me." "That's rubbish, Harry, and you know it. It's your protection that's keeping Pavati safe. The problems will start when that protection isn't there, when the person she's flirting with doesn't know who she is." They were all looking at Luna now, rarely having seen her angry before. "When we were at Padma and Parvati's birthday party, every boy that danced with me knew you were watching them. That's fine with me. I like the idea of a big brother watching out for me. Just as I know that same brother will let me make my own decisions as I get older. Parvati is playing on that protection. She's the one in the wrong, not you." This drew another groan out of Padma. "I'm going to have to talk to Mum about this. If she behaves like that during the holidays, Dad really will take some action. I love my sister, but she can be her own worst enemy sometimes. What she and Lavender consider an attractive trait has every decent wizard in Hogwarts running in the other direction. I know Parvati has certainly not gone any further than the three of us here who are the same age. She's the one who's going to get her reputation tarnished, though. Word will quickly spread and the betrothal offers will stop. At least the decent ones will. None could see this discussion ending well, so Draco tried to change the subject. Is Kingsley all set for the fair, Harry? This drew a groan from Hermione, only this time it was done for comedic effect. We still have a mountain of work to do, and yet all Harry's thinking about is two other girls. Any other boyfriend on the planet would have known it was time to roll out their most passionate denials, claiming their girlfriend was the only one for them. Their bond, though, meant there was no need for such declarations. Harry also knew Hermione was teasing him. Astrid will be nearly 3 weeks old now, and we haven't seen Sapphire in ages. We'll also get to see our brother this summer. What's a fair compared to that? No one could really argue with that. The only other voice raised against the fair on the train wasn't having quite the same reaction. To be fair, Ron wasn't really saying anything against the fair. He was just proclaiming that the Quidditch World Cup final was going to be far more important even this summer, especially since his dad had got the Weasley family great tickets. He was finding no takers supporting this stance, though. Not even amongst the Hogwarts Quidditch players, considering that at least 14 of them would get the once-in-a-lifetime chance to play against professional opposition. Their opinion was perhaps understandable. Harry's reactions were predictable and also understandable. He'd just walked into Crow's Nest and had his arms wrapped around a very excited Sapphire. Hermione then took his place hugging the goblin as Harry headed straight for Henrika and his goddaughter. He was home, his family was there, so all was right in his world. Dinner that night was loud and boisterous. The hard work would start tomorrow. Tonight was all about being a family again, something they'd all missed. Tonks was sitting with her goddaughter in her arms and giving her boyfriend looks that had Sirius sniggering at his fellow marauders' attempts to hide his discomfort. It should be an interesting holiday. Reinforcements would be arriving Monday in the shape of the Longbottoms, Patils, Abbots, and quite a few more of their friends. Emma had already turned one room in the house into a control center with display boards on the walls, waiting on the information of who was doing what and when to be entered. The stadium was the centerpiece of the weekend and had an entire wall to itself, with 6 events each day being scheduled to start at 11 a.m. and then proceed at 2-hour intervals until the final event at 9 in the evening closed the fair for the day. Everyone had their preferred option for where they would like to work at the fair, but needed to wait until the entire extended family got together before sorting that out. They would, however, be getting in as much shooting practice as possible before then, with Dan acting as organizer and judge, thus not actually shooting. The competition would be wide open. There was also the problem that, with so many of the friends being involved in Marauder demonstrations and the Quidditch matches, they would be relying heavily on the adults to be in charge of the attractions. Once those positions were settled, it would then be time to pick their teams of Hogwarts students who were going to help run the attractions. They were all going to be incredibly busy, but were looking forward to an event that could change attitudes of the magical community. Lucas actually expressed the sentiment that the fair could be used to push those attitudes even further. While Harry didn't entirely disagree with that opinion, he did defend their reasons for not currently doing so. We have pushed the Goblin agenda very hard to get us to where we are today. It has not been easy, and neither has it been cheap. Gringotts is picking up the cost for most of this weekend, though the Baron of Kincassy will certainly be contributing. While charitable, the Goblins are not in business to run a charity. This had Sapphire in knots of laughter before Harry continued. I remember saying something similar to Hermione almost 2 years ago, when she was vigorously extolling the rights of house elves. Yes, that is certainly something I fully support, but if we spread ourselves too thin, it dilutes any achievements we might make. It's the exact same situation here. If we try for too much, then the message could easily get diluted or even lost. Witches and wizards are opening their eyes and slowly but surely no longer looking on goblins as creatures. This also opens the door for others to step through too. This weekend is all about not only opening that door, we need to kick it clean off its hinges so that door can never be closed again. This earned him a kiss from Hermione. It's just a pity Father had to return to Gringotts. He would have loved to have heard that. We might make a diplomat out of you yet. The diplomat in question was currently walking beside Severus Snape as the potions master got ready to face his destiny. Severus noticed a few of his colleagues had turned up to witness the ceremony. Quite a few more from the nation had joined them just to gawk at the human undergoing a goblin ceremony. He didn't care. Severus was ready to face this. In actual fact, Severus had been happier in his 2 years inside Gringotts than at any other time in his life. Severus was bedecked in a dragon skin toga, similar to the one that he'd seen warriors wear. It was a gift from Barchoke and also left his arms bare, allowing everyone to see his hated tattoo. The mere possibility of not being tied to the lunatic riddle had him ready to face anything. The director himself was honoring him by performing this ceremony. Severus was glad he'd changed the offered oath to one that should strengthen his commitment to Gringotts and the nation. He'd found a home for himself here and was determined to stay. That the director got straight to the point was another endearing quality of this culture he welcomed. Too many years spent trying to decipher what Albus was up to had fostered an appreciation for straight talking. Are you ready to give your oath and be judged by the stone? No flowery speeches, but proceeding directly to the job at hand, just what was needed here. Severus wondered if there wasn't some goblin blood in him too. He was about to discover just what the nation thought of his blood. I am. He steadily held his hand forward as Ragnarok granted Severus more honor by using his battle axe to slice open the palm of Severus's hand. He was quite proud that he managed not to flinch as the axe did its bloody work. Severus knew the real pain was still to come. At least he hoped it was. Failure was not an option he had considered for today. A magnificently ornate plinth just seemed to emphasize the ordinariness of the slab of stone it supported. But Severus had been told there was no more powerful artifact in the nation. It was changed days indeed that a human got to see it. Never mind make a blood offering to the stone. Placing his palm on the slightly warm stone, Severus offered his oath to the nation. I, Severus Snape, of my own free will, offer my oath to the nation. I swear on my honor and my magic, never to work, take arms or plot against the nation. I also swear to be the best citizen of this nation I can be. Barchoke had said that swearing on his honor would have been enough, but Severus wanted his commitment to be out there for all to see. All the spectators were now intently watching to see what happened next. None were more focused than Severus himself. He felt the heat from the stone beginning to travel up his arm. At the same time, a coldness from his chest moved into his shoulder to begin its journey to the battlefield. The battle was graphically played out on his arm for all to witness. The black skull of his dark mark slowly became blood red. It also morphed in shape to that of a dragon's skull. The snake reacted violently to this and wrapped itself around the skull, trying to crush it. It was hampered though by its tail being in the dragon's mouth, and then the dragon began to chew. As the dragon slowly consumed the snake, flesh began forming over the skull, and a body began to appear under the forming head. The snake, though, was still putting up a ferocious fight. It started biting the flesh that was forming on the dragon's skull, destroying a newly grown eye. The pain Severus was experiencing was worse than anything he'd suffered in his life before. Even being under the Cruciatus curse from the Dark Bastard wasn't as excruciating as this. He also knew this was considered part of the test to whether he was worthy to join the nation. Severus could end the pain at any moment simply by lifting his hand off the stone. It was sheer willpower that kept his hand stuck to that piece of rock, aided by the very graphic example that his battle was being won by the right side. The snake was now frantically flailing about, desperate to escape as its head got ever closer to those deadly jaws of the red dragon. In his mind, Severus heard that snake's head crunch as the dragon finally claimed victory. He certainly felt something inside him snap. He had held his own jaws clamped shut in order not to seem weak by screaming from the pain. Those jaws now opened and a victory roar rang round the chamber. That his roar of victory was joined by goblin voices pleased Severus more than he would ever admit to. He was drenched in sweat and barely able to stand. Severus understood, though, he needed to walk out this chamber unaided for his victory to be complete. Ragnarok then held his hand up so that all witnessing the event could see that it had been healed. Severus Snape made an offer to the nation, an offer we all saw her accepting. The nation healed this wizard's hand and claimed his allegiance above all others. He lives, works, and speaks like one of us. The nation has now claimed him as one of us. Citizen Snape, you leave here with your honor intact. May your efforts to be a good citizen be rewarded. With a respectful bow, it was over. Looking down at his new red dragon tattoo, easily gave Severus the strength to walk out of the chamber with his head held high. He was definitely taking the rest of the day off, though. The four knew they would be busy for the rest of the day, but this was their time. They were joined by a fifth, as the strangest flock of birds ever seen in a Scottish glen enjoyed themselves. It had taken Smeeta to confirm what type of hawk her daughter was. Padma couldn't hide her delight at discovering she was a Besra hawk, a native of her homeland. She was about the same size as Hermione's kestrel form, hover, with speckled brown markings on a white background. Neville certainly won boyfriend points when he said she was as beautiful as a hawk as she was as a witch. Harry then showed it wasn't only Riddle who could create names from anagrams and christened her hawk Saber. Since Padma walked about with a sword at her hip, she loved her hawk's nickname. Hermione had quietly asked her best friend where the name Buff originated from for Neville's tawny owl form. She didn't think Padma would choose his name based on a simple thing like color. She really should have known better, since Padma's answer saw Hermione changing color to bright red. Hermione, when I see Neville with his shirt off, I just want to run my hands all over him. We'll let everyone else, including our mates, think the name's based on color. Really, I just want to spend hours buffing my Neville. I don't know if the blood bonding is affecting my hormones, but it's going to be one hell of a struggle waiting until I'm Mrs. Padma Longbottom to complete this bond, and then I'll get to spend every night with my husband. A blushing Hermione confirmed she felt the exact same about Harry, and only the fact there was just one more summer after this before they got married kept her going. Padma confirmed Hermione had certainly got the hang of dressing up the good news. One more summer sounded a whole lot better than having to wait 2 years. She also resolved to talk to Neville about making it a double wedding. Neville as Buff, his tawny owl form, was the biggest of the birds. That was until Ergit decided to join them and show these imposters how to really fly. The five had a great time flying along the glen, and then they spotted the group of children waving madly to them. Harry had mastered his takeoffs and was now working on a landing that didn't involve Hermione's chest. Not that he didn't love that particular technique, it was just so distracting if he ever had to go from Swift to Centurion and be instantly ready for battle. It would also leave Hermione exposed to attack as she stood waiting for him to land. His new technique saw Swift swoop down and then pull up sharply. As his speed bled off and he was ready to stall, Swift became Harry as he dropped the 2 or 3 feet to the ground. This drew cheers from the children, especially when the other 4 joined him. With Ergit perched on his shoulder, Harry was about to introduce their 2 friends, when the group found themselves being dragged by little hands into the Gringotts zone. Padma was wondering how these children recognized her when she suddenly came upon something all 4 of them hoped never to see again. Since the goblins had rendered the creature down into sellable components and commodities, they knew this beast inside and out, that every hair on Padma's body seemed to stand on end at first sight of this exhibit was testament to the goblin craftsman who had made an exact replica of the basilisk they had fought in the Chamber of Secrets. "Harry, did you know about this?" One look at her friend's face answered Padma's question. The children who held her hands pulled her over and suddenly Padma had a lot more questions. She was looking at an exact copy of a younger version of Padma Patil, firing a spell at the basilisk. She was startled out of her stupor by her best friend's voice coming from beside her. "At least they don't have me sitting on my bum in a puddle of basilisk blood." The entrance hall was divided in 2 by the tableau that was simply breathtaking, provided you weren't one of the people appearing in the scene depicted. The columns were structural and holding the ceiling up, The exact scale basilisk winding through those columns was thankfully purely decorative. The model of Hermione had a bloody sword and was retreating behind a pillar as model Harry got ready to attack. She was studying her mannequin before turning to her friend. "Padma, does my hair really look like that from the back?" This cracked Harry up. His laughter set off all the kids, with Padma and Neville soon following. The witch who caused all the hilarity soon found herself wrapped in a pair of familiar strong arms. "This is genius." This drew the attention of the other three to Harry, obviously looking for an explanation of that remark. "Who do you know, apart from Emma, who wouldn't want to see this? Between this exhibit and the dragons, people will be pouring in here in their droves." Neville let out a groan at that. "Great, just what we need, more publicity." This was before Padma and I started exercising too. "Nev honey, people will be too busy looking at the basilisk to bother with us." At least they missed Parvati out the scene. This was the perfect opening for Hermione to ask her friend if she'd spoken with Smita about Parvati's behavior. Padma and Neville had just arrived this morning, and all four had took to the air immediately after greeting one another. Padma had her head down as she answered, "I didn't have to. We forgot about all the adults at Hogwarts who are part of the extended family. My mum knew as much about her behavior as we did. Parvati got roasted and won't be let out of Mum's sight all summer. She might relax when we get to your island, since there will be no unattached boys there." The four couldn't stay glum for long though, not when they were surrounded by so many excited children. These children had quickly volunteered to be the testers for all the attractions. They would spend the next week or so helping the people who would be running those attractions refine their operating systems and techniques. They would be starting tomorrow in what was being considered the kiddie zone, an area where those with their ages not in double figures would rule. The kiddie zone is the most important section of the Glen. The success of this entire venture will be decided there. If we can get the children playing together regardless of their upbringing, that to me would be the dream outcome. That's why there has been no expense spared in that area. It's also why I want to flood the place with helpers. If we use the Marauders for this, it will give you a full year group to work with. They're already all friends and used to working together as well as looking out for each other. They are also the only groups I know who will certainly treat all the children the same. The extended family had all gathered and were discussing what they would be doing on the weekend of the fair. Seeing Harry this nervous brought home to everyone just how much he had riding on this weekend. They were attempting something that only a few years ago would have seen anyone even suggesting an idea like this, branded as crazy. An event where goblins and muggles mixed freely with witches and wizards of all blood classes was certainly an audacious plan, possibly even a touch crazy. It was now up to the people sitting in this room to help pull it off. The kiddie zone had Emma, Moa, Henrika and Sapphire in charge. With an entire year group assisting them, they should hopefully be able to stay on top of things and stop any problems from developing. One little pure-blood prince or princess pushing past the other children waiting in a queue could quickly escalate to something ugly that could have the potential to ruin the entire weekend. The abbots asked if they could look after the winter zone, with the Longbottoms sticking their names beside the water zone. Augusta would be supervising the eating area, though with the elves doing all the work it really was just supervising. Big Kid Sirius got his wish and was in charge of the roller coaster, while the Patillas' experience with flying carpets saw them allocated there. Dan and Lucas were now used to working together, so would be in control of the stadium, while Remus offered to run the cinema tent, with Tonks in charge of security and Bill Weasley already earmarked to front the Gringotts zone. It left them short of cover for the go-karts until Draco made a suggestion. Pansy and I would obviously love to do that, but we have our Marauders Sunday morning. I've got a Quidditch match Saturday evening, and both of us were hoping to take part in the shooting competition. What if our mothers helped out? They could be in charge of the carts on those times when we need to go to the stadium. Emma had her marker in hand. Elspeth and Narcissa's names being written into the available slot was all the answer Draco needed. Apart from the Quidditch, Susan and Hannah were in the same position, so put themselves down to work in the winter zone, along with Hannah's parents. Parvati got no say in the matter. She would be beside her mother for the entire weekend. Padma and Neville were keen to avoid the atmosphere that would generate, so stuck their names down to work with Frank and Alice when they weren't required in the stadium. Since Luna would be in the stadium on Saturday as Crow's Marauders put on a display, followed by working in the kiddie zone all day on Sunday, they wouldn't let her put her name down for anything else. Her dad would be there and Luna was being given the time to spend that day with her father. Amelia felt terrible that she couldn't put her name forward for anything, but Harry wasn't having that. You'll be in the same position as Hermione, father and me. Our names might not be up there, but that doesn't mean we won't be working our backsides off. Oh, Amelia, I didn't know you were fighting in the arena too. Moom. Hermione tried to keep the frustration out her voice but didn't quite manage it. Harry's fighting Master Sharpshard as part of the Goblin combat display. Harry fights against us every day in training. It's not like he's stepping into the pit again. This did nothing to alleviate Emma's fears. I watched Barchoke's memory of the last time those two fought. Need I remind you this Sharpshard put both you and Harry in the Goblin medical facility? Don't expect me to sit here and be pleased at that prospect. I won't be able to relax each day until I know my son's all right. Harry rose and went over to hold Emma. Mum, I may get beaten, but I'll be fine, and come right over to see you as soon as the fight is over. His father felt compelled to say something. Emma, Harry really will be fine. That day was a one-off, something that I can assure you will never happen again. Barchoke now addressed his comments to the entire extended family. This single event is also the one being most looked forward to by every goblin who will attend Kinnisea over the weekend. The director has already asked for seats to be reserved for him on both days. Our son is exceptional with a blade in his hand, while his tutor, Master Sharpshard, is regarded as simply the best there is. Witnessing the Baron of Kinnisea cross blades with Master Sharpshard will ensure their visit is a wonderful day out, especially if they place their gold on the winner. Sapphire chipping in with my golds on Harry may have gotten a laugh, but it didn't ease Emma's worries any. Harry tried again. We opened Saturday with Crow's Marauders putting on a display. Then we have the Goblin fighting techniques. I'll be fine and ready to beat Hermione in the shooting contest right after that. In your dreams, Crow. Hermione's quip actually drew a wan smile from Emma. Her sensible side was telling her that Harry would be safe, but her hormones had protective mother slapping that sensible side silly. She, as much as anyone though, knew how important this weekend was to her children. Hearing from Barchoke that this was the premier event of the entire weekend for the Goblin Nation meant her son was always going to do it. Both Granger ladies loved the boy who was a goblin at heart. They had to accept that side of him. It was who he was. Emma, though, didn't want Harry going into this with her disapproval ringing in his ears. Just promise me you'll be careful. Sapphire chipped in again. Would you like to promise me you'll win? Emma, this time, saw the funny side. And you, young lady, shouldn't be gambling. That's an easy way to lose your gold. The young goblin simply shrugged her shoulders at that. The gold I've got, I either won betting on Harry when you visited Egypt, or picked up for free after he gave away Bloodfang's family fortune. You all know how famous Harry is in the wizarding community. What you don't seem to realize is that he's every bit as famous in the nation too. Oh, and his mate is doing as much to change attitudes as Harry is. Centurion Crow and his warrior wife could easily become one of those comic books Harry is so fond of reading. This revelation was met with a bunch of blank stares. What? You seriously didn't know? My family moved back to Britain because of Harry, and we're not the only ones. We have families legally living outside Gringotts for the first time in centuries. Again because of Harry. Those same families have children who adore these two, not because of any titles but simply that they make sure to spend time with them. Hermione has warriors ready to throw themselves in front of curses to protect her, a female who fights with fury beside her centurion mate. The nation has never known anything like these two, and will do everything it can to help them. The stunned silence just encouraged Sapphire to continue. When I was younger, a lot of people didn't want me hanging out with Harry. Those same people are now really jealous. I'm spending my time in Kinnisea. I think that jealousy will only get worse once they visit the fair. I say that's just their hard luck. That last remark saw Harry's protective side kick in. Are they giving you any trouble? His goblin friend bursting out laughing at that question told Harry the answer was probably not. Do you think anyone is going to give me any trouble knowing that you are my friend? What you did to protect Hermione is now passing into legend, as is your defeat of Master Sharpshard. No one wants to cross you by picking on me. This drew a giggle from Luna. It's the same in Hogwarts. Luna's laughter died in her throat as Parvati lowered her head at that. I'm sorry, Parvati. I wasn't meaning anything by that. It was Smeeta who answered the little blonde. We know, Luna, just as we know neither you nor Sapphire would ever play on that. Mum, I get the message. There's no need to tell everyone about it. Since most of the people in this room have already witnessed your behavior, I really don't see why you're objecting to me bringing it up here. You also still don't seem to grasp just how unacceptable your behavior is. Parvati, something that you returning to Hogwarts in September depends upon. At that, Parvati fled the room in tears. Padma was soon up and following her sister out of the room as their father tried to apologize. I'm sorry for that. Dan actually cut him off. There's nothing to apologize for, Ramro. We've known your girls for a few years now, and every parent here shares your concern. At least there's the peace of mind in knowing her friends and family will ensure that nothing happens to her in the castle. Dan, that might be the only reason I let her return to Hogwarts come September. I'm just struggling to understand how two sisters can be so different. It was Harry who interrupted this time. You never met my mother's sister. This drew a few gasps before Emma started to giggle. Sorry everyone, but I knew the woman. I can't think of anyone more unlike Harry. Friendly and loving were not words one could ever have associated with Petunia Dursley. She probably didn't know the meaning of them. That was a now blushing Harry's cue to try and turn the conversation back onto the fair. Padma discovered she wasn't a welcome visitor as she caught up with her twin. So has the perfect daughter come to gloat, or just to say I told you so? Back off, Pav, and save your attitude for someone who deserves it. You got yourself into this mess and only you can get yourself out. Instead of working on that, you're behaving like Ronald Weasley and refusing to even acknowledge that you're in the wrong. Her anger hadn't abated one bit as Parvati fired back at her sister. What am I doing that's so wrong? Padma's own anger might be on a longer fuse, but it was every bit as volatile. How about you and Lavender behaving like a couple of sluts? Will that do for starters? How can you say that? You know I would never. Piff, you don't have to tell me. It's the rest of the school who you're giving that impression to. Her reputation is sometimes all a witch has, and it can so easily be tarnished. You're putting yours in danger, and for what? If all this flirting is part of some plan to hook the wizard of your dreams, then you need a new plan. This one clearly isn't working. What happened to being friends with a wizard first? Padma, wizards don't want to be friends with witches. The decent ones do. And they're either not interested or all snapped up already. Your flirting is going to bring you trouble, but that's not all that's at stake here. I stood with Neville as he fought Flint, defending my honor. I also watched as Harry killed in the pit to protect Hermione's. Believe me, Pa, I can't think of anything less romantic than that. Both of them would also kill anyone who took advantage of you. That places a bit of responsibility on you not to put yourself in these situations. It's not an excuse for you to play on. Oh, so now we get to the truth of the matter. You're more worried about them than your sister. I guess I've seen that coming for the last couple of years. Well, you don't have to worry. I can look after myself. This was the final straw for Padma. She really let her temper out to play. Your family, though. That means we have to look after you. Even if it means facing up to the biggest fucking basilisk the world has ever seen. I just can't believe my sister would be stupid enough not to learn from her mistakes. You know what? Perhaps you should ask Ronald Weasley out. You two would appear made for each other. With that, a still raging Padma stormed off, leaving her twin left standing struggling for words. Hermione had Luna and Sapphire sharing her bedroom as Crow's Nest was full to bursting. That was why she was saying goodnight to Harry outside her room. You know, the closer this fair gets, the more I'm looking forward to getting away to the island when it's all over. Is that wrong of me? If it's wrong, then put my name down too. I have to say though, for me it's more to do with the thought of you in a bikini. My beautiful mate has certainly filled out since the last time we were there. That's what will get me through this weekend, knowing I am going to be lying on a beach with my Hermione. What more could I want? Hermione helped him answer that question by grabbing Harry and lovingly kissing him. Voldemort was currently standing on an island surrounded by water, but there all similarities ended. There was no sunshine, no bikinis, and certainly no loving kisses on offer. The Dark Lord wasn't there for any of that, though. His purpose was far more nefarious. He had left servants to guard one of his most precious possessions. Those defenses had somehow been breached. While his necklace may be gone, the deadly servants who guarded it remained. These were servants Voldemort intended to incorporate into his battle to regain credibility as a Dark Lord to be feared. Awake, my warriors. There is work to be done. The black water that had been as smooth as glass a moment ago was now disturbed in multiple places, as the Dark Lord's latest troops answered their master's call.